The winds of grace are always blowing, but you have to raise the sail, had said Thakur. Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you in the spiritual journey where we have congregated to celebrate the 186th birthday Tithi celebration of Thakur Sri Ramakrishna Paramhansadev. This is the first effort of this magnitude by the Scotland Ramakrishna Sharada Society, which started a few years back with two families talking about Thakur, reading a bit of Kathamrita, and is now gathering momentum. And we feel absolutely blessed to have four enlightened souls of our times to help us raise the sail of bhakti that Thakur had talked about this evening and beyond. So without much further ado, let's start the evening. And first we have Shuchandra from Glasgow, a city in Scotland that was actually visited by Swami Vivekananda. And she'll be singing a stuti describing the glories of Thakur Sri Ramakrishna. So let's embark on the spiritual journey, and over to you, Shuchandra.
Jaya Shri Rama Krishna Rama Krishna Tu hi Brahma Rupa Daya Rupa Prema Rupa Tu hi Sava Jana Ko Parama Sukhadata Jaya Shri Rama Krishna Rama Krishna Tu hi Parabrahma Narayana Tu hi Brahma Jyoti Srijana Palana Karana Tu hi Rama Tu hi Krishna Tu hi Sakala Dukha Nivarana Namo Namo Shri Rama Krishna Namo Namo Shri Rama Krishna Jagat Jana Trata Jaya Shri Rama Krishna Rama Krishna.
That was absolutely magnificent, Shuchandra. Thank you so much. Thakur used to say, when the fruit appears, the blossom drops off. Love of God is that fruit, and the rituals are the blossom. Such simple were his fables to impart knowledge and bhakti to his disciples through generations. And to help us understand this further, I'm blessed and fortunate to introduce the first speaker of the day, Pravrajika Divyananda Prana Mataji. Mataji is a monastic member of Sri Sharada Math and currently editor of the journal Samvit, published from New Delhi. She had been instrumental in delivering multiple workshops to students across various universities of India, including the IIT, and had traveled extensively both in India and abroad to deliver lectures and classes on topics like self knowledge, exploring the subjective sciences, and finding the interface between subjective and objective sciences and mind management. And tonight, Mataji is going to tell us a bit more about Sri Ramakrishna and Jnanamishrita Bhakti. Can we have Mataji, please? Pranam Mataji, warmest regards to you and thank you for joining us. We are blessed to have you here and over to you for your talk. Thank you.
Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnan Jagadguru Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Mahorma. My pranams at the feet of all the revered Maharajas. My namaskars to all devotees. It is such a joy to be in your midst. And you showed such beautiful pictures of Belur Math and Sharda Math and the places associated with Thakur. Thank you so much for that, because it took my mind naturally there. You created the ambience for this kind of a discussion. Thank you so much. So today we will be discussing for a short time Jnanamishrita Bhakti in this section. Jnanamishrita Bhakti as given to us by Sri Ramakrishna. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, very clearly Thakur says at many places that the highest bhakti and the highest jnana are one and the same thing. There is no difference between the two. In their Vaidhi stages, in their preliminary stages, they may appear different. But the power behind knowledge is bhakti actually. Even the Bhagavad Gita will tell us this. We will study a bit of that also. The power behind knowledge is actually a ekanishta bhakti towards the object of knowledge. And the power behind bhakti, of course, is a solid knowledge of what you are, of the nature of God, isn't it? So these two aspects, bhakti and jnana, are not two watertight compartments. They intermingle in our own spiritual lives. You will see sometimes each bhav dominates. So that is why Thakur gives us this Jnanamishrita Bhakti as the supreme means to the attainment of the great goal of our life, the knowledge of God, self-knowledge, whatever you call it. Besides, there's another reason also. You see, we have all these faculties of thought, emotion, will, the propensity to action. Since we have all of these faculties, each of them has to be utilized in our path towards the supreme goal. Modern education trains us to actually work on these faculties to build them up. So then how can we exclude them in our spiritual pursuit? That is why we need a combination of bhakti, jnana, all of these four yogas. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda have been the harmonizers of all these four yogas. This is the great message of harmony which they give us, that all bhakti, jnana, karma and rajyog, all these have to be brought together and we march towards the infinite with all these together. So it's a constitutional necessity that we combine bhakti and jnana. It's not a matter of choice or anything like that. Also, Sri Ramakrishna makes it very clear through his beautiful parables that the formless God and God with form are not two different things, obviously. The real nature of the form, the God with form, is the formless Brahman. And the formless Brahman can manifest in any form as per the desire of the devotee. So Sri Ramakrishna, when somebody asked him, is God with form, without form, or what is his nature? Sri Ramakrishna said, he is with form, without form, and again beyond both. And he is many other things besides. So that's a beautiful way of describing the infinitude of God. And then Sri Ramakrishna gives this amazing parable. You see, there is water in the ocean, a huge, vast amount of water. But in those places where the water has a cooling influence on it, in very cold places, this very same water condenses into ice and icebergs are formed. You see icebergs, pure white, in so many shapes, in so many ways they are formed. Again, when the sun arises, these icebergs melt into the sea again. So Sri Ramakrishna says, Brahman is like that, the water of the ocean. But he condenses into the iceberg of God with form, the personal God, whom we can relate to, whom we can love, whom we can form a relationship with for our sadhana. And again, when the sun of knowledge arises, this very same form melts away into the formless. What a beautiful parable. It brings together all these aspects of God. You see the form, formless aspect, this what we call sakar, nirakar, the sagun, nirgun aspects, God with attributes, God without attributes. All of it has been harmonized in the glorious life and message of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna is the final word about spiritual life. In fact, he is the starting point and the final word, I would say. Because everything that we require for spiritual growth, spiritual fulfillment, you will find in this great life, a life immersed in God consciousness, which came out from that state only to give us this knowledge, to harmonize everything and give it to us in a format which we can practice so that we move towards Him. This has been the tremendous life of the avatar, Sri Ramakrishna. And that is why we find such stunning knowledge, parables in the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. One more thing which Sri Ramakrishna points out to is, you see, this bhakti and jnana, this mishran, using both these techniques together, this is important because we are still in Shakti Relaka. We are still in the realm of Shakti. We are under the jurisdiction of Shakti. Sri Ramakrishna says plainly that as long as one has not realized Brahman, is not established in Samadhi, so long he is under the jurisdiction of Shakti. And hence Sagun Sakar Upasana becomes very important in this realm. And that is why it's a very practical aid to move further. And who doesn't have the faculty of love? We always want to love and adore somebody. You see, this is there in every life. It's the nature of the human mind to worship and adore. So then the personal God is meant for that. Why should you deny Him? Just because your philosophical intellect doesn't want it. So we must learn to harmonize these paths. There is no other way, in fact. That is why Swami Vivekananda gave out his message that all of these 4 yogas have to be performed together. You see, nobody has given this kind of a message in the past. If you read the spiritual heritage of India, you will see many of these systems, these yogas based on different systems of philosophies, were at loggerheads with each other for many centuries. But here you find a harmony of everything, bringing everything together and making it applicable, practical, so that we can attain the supreme goal of human life. This is the beauty of Sri Ramakrishna. Also, Sri Ramakrishna gives both Sri Ramakrishna and Swamiji have used this beautiful conversation between Sri Ram and Hanuman to demonstrate the nature of these different stages of Vedanta, these different paths. You see, in this conversation between Sri Ram and Hanumanji, Thakur says, Sri Ram once asked Hanuman, how do you look upon me? Can you tell me? And Hanuman gave the most intelligent reply possible. He said, Deha buddhya tu dasosmi, jiva buddhya tvad amshakaha, atma buddhya tvamevaham iti me nishchitamati. There cannot be a more precise, wonderful answer. He says, you see, as long as I am with body consciousness, confined as it were, as an individual as it were, with a body-mind complex, so long I can only relate to you with a relationship. That is why the Sakar Sagun aspect of God is required. I relate to you as a servant. He is telling Sri Ram, Hanumanji is telling Sri Ram. And when I look upon myself, when I know myself to be the Jiva, the embodied soul, then I know myself to be a part of you. You are the whole, I am a part. This is the Vishishta Vedic position. Again, here you see, you require bhakti, that is why. And when I know myself to be the Atman, pure consciousness, then obviously I am verily of the very stuff as you. I am verily you and you are verily me. So until we reach that stage, this combination practice becomes very important. It is the most scientific, obvious thing we can do with our spiritual practice. That is why Sri Ramakrishna's insistence on Jnana Mishrita Bhakti, mixing up Bhakti and Jnana. This is beautifully also illustrated in the life of Totapuri, Sri Ramakrishna's Vedanta Guru. See, that in that great life, many hardcore Advaitins come to this understanding in many ways. So Totapuri was like that. He was a hardcore ascetic who had attained the supreme knowledge of Brahman through Nirvikalpa Samadhi after a period of strong spiritual practice for 40 years. And because he had grasped the nature of Brahman through Nirvikalpa Samadhi like that, he knew the power of the human intellect and the indomitable human will to take us to the highest. And that's all he believed in. So when he came to Sri Ramakrishna, he had one look at Thakur, who was sitting there, and he said, this is a man who is fit for Vedanta sadhana. And he asked him, would you like to learn Vedanta from me? And Thakur said, I will ask my mother and come. And he headed straight to the Kali temple. And then he asks, I think you know the incident very well. He asks Mother Kali tells him he has come for that purpose. Go and learn Vedanta from him. And then Sri Ramakrishna comes back and tells Totapuri, yes, my mother has given permission, I will learn. And then begins the great Vedanta sadhana in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. He first takes formal sannyas, and after that, when he sits for meditation as directed by the Guru, by Totapuri, who is watching over him, his main obstacle is Mother Kali herself. That adorable name and form, the mother to whom he has renounced everything, who comes in whose vision he has day and night. He's plunged in her consciousness. She appears in his mind constantly all the time. So he is not able to go beyond that name and form. And then Totapuri says, what do you mean you are not able to go beyond this? This is Nam Roop. It is Mithya. So he takes a shard of glass or a piece of pottery there and presses the area between the Agnya Chakra of Thakur and says, concentrate here. And with the sword of knowledge, you cut Mother Kali into two. It means to say, it's a figurative way of saying you transcend name and form. Sri Ramakrishna does this. The instant awakening, and he's able to transcend name and form and plunge into the state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. You see, the importance of Sagun Sakar Upasana we can understand here. Because the mind is so well trained in complete devotion to the personal aspect of God, to God with form, with attributes, the mind instantly is able to transcend that and plunge into the higher state of Nirvikalpa. And then in 3 days' time, for 3 days, Sri Ramakrishna remains plunged in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The Guru is so surprised. What it took 40 years for him to attain, Sri Ramakrishna attained just like that, and for 3 days remained immersed in that state. At the end of the third day, Totapuri comes and gradually brings down Thakur's mind from that state of Nirvikalpa Samadhi, and then both disciple and guru embrace each other, and now comes the time when Totapuri himself learns the lesson of Shakti worship. You see, mother has her own plans of teaching. The very fact that you see the imagery of Mother Kali, she stands on Shiva. Then only manifestation is possible when she stands on Shiva, because she is the Adhishtatri of this world of manifestation. And Totapuri would not admit of her. But one day it so happened, Totapuri, it seems, stayed over in Dakshineshwar for a period of 11 months. Although he would stay in any place for just 3 days, he just stayed over in Dakshineshwar. And one day he had a severe bout of dysentery, very painful dysentery. And he himself could not believe it, that his mind had come down to the level of bodily pain. This was inconceivable for him. One whose mind was constantly in the state of Nirvikalpa, one who had touched the knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, he is coming down to body consciousness. This was unacceptable to him. So he decided to put an end to his body that night. And he goes to the Ganges, Mother Ganga there. You know what a wide expanse of water it is. But that night, when Totapuri waded into the Ganga to give up his body, there was not water in the Ganga to drown him. He always felt the ground under his feet. So much so that he reached the other shore and realized that he can't be drowned. There's no water. What is happening? What is this Maya? He understands something miraculous is going on. And he returns back, comes back, and that whole night he plunges into meditation on Mother Kali. He understands the power of Shakti. All of our, you see, other than pure consciousness, everything is nothing but Shakti, Prakriti. This is Sankhya. Other than pure consciousness, everything that you experience belongs to the realm of Shakti and Prakriti. You see, our living and dying, our striving or not striving, our yogas, the use of all our faculties, our Ichha Shakti, our Kriya Shakti, our Jnana Shakti, our sensory organs, our motor organs, everything is Shakti and functioning through her will with her power. So then how can you deny her? The very fact of experience means an objectified consciousness, which means Shakti Relaka. So then he understood the meaning of Shakti. Everything is in the realm of Shakti. Everything that is in the world of manifestation. So then, after this meditation, he understood what is this Shakti Tattva. And the next day, he and Sri Ramakrishna went into Mother Kali's temple. For the first time, Totapuri went and bowed down to Mother. There were tears in his eyes. When he came out, Sri Ramakrishna told him, see, my mother and Brahman are Abhed. They are not different. Brahma Shakti Abhed. It is consciousness that through Shakti manifests as life. This has to be acknowledged. That is why the importance of Sakar Sagun Upasana, the importance of developing bhakti. Until you make this crossover, until we enter the transcendent, it is required, absolutely. And it will take us directly there. So all these beautiful lessons we learn from these great lives. In fact, in the lives of all jnanis, you will find this deep element of bhakti. Looking at the face of Swamiji, Swami Vivekananda, that time Narendranath, Sri Ramakrishna used to say that, look at his face, how can he be a dry jnani? He's a bhakta at heart. He wears the mask of jnana. And Swamiji used to say about Thakur, he's a jnani at heart, but he appears to be a bhakta. So you see, there is always the combination of these two. You cannot separate them. At different points in our life, maybe one gains prominence. Maybe one is expressed more. But these two are inextricably linked with each other. That is why Jnana Mishrita Bhakti. You find this even in the life of Shankaracharya, in the life of Raman Maharshi. All these great teachers, men of the highest enlightenment, you will find this. In fact, Raman Maharshi used to say, Bhakti is Jnana Mata. Because it is through the power of Bhakti that this Ekanishtha Jnana becomes possible. And it is in awareness that Bhakti takes full flame, in full awareness. So the two are inextricably linked. There's no question about that. Let me go a little into Vedanta. We studied a bit of Sankhya, but even in Vedanta, you will find these beautiful expressions of the coming together of Bhakti and Jnana. In the Upanishads, actually Mahapurush Maharaj, Swami Shivananda, used to call the Upanishads Bhakti Shastras. They are compendiums of Bhakti, he would say. In the Upanishad itself, you find Rasovaisaha. That is how Brahman is described. He is of the nature of Rasa. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is such a beautiful description given of the nature of love. When do you love? Nava are patyu kamaya pati priyo bhavati, atmanastu kamaya pati priyo bhavati. Like this it goes. You don't love anybody for his own sake. The husband is not loved for his own sake. It is for the sake of the Atman that the husband is loved. This is what the mantra is telling us. Nothing can be loved for its own sake. It is loved because it expresses consciousness as life. Wherever there is this expression of life, because there is consciousness shining behind it, its expression is life, there you will find love. And that is Bhakti. So you see, Bhakti is there so much, even in the Upanishads. Who says Upanishads are mere scriptures of Jnana Yoga? Not at all. In fact, this description of Brahman, what we usually say is Sat Chit Ananda. He is Satchid Ananda Swarup, existence, consciousness and bliss. You think and see, this is how we are objectively trying to conceive Brahman. Subjectively, how does this feel? Subjectively, Asti becomes Asmi. I am. The sense of existence. I am. Amness, you can say. I exist. See, nobody has doubt about his own existence, isn't it? Does anybody say, I'm not sure if I exist? Of course not. We always exist. In existence is experience. So this Sat aspect, in us it is Asmi, I am. The Chit aspect is of the nature of I am a conscious being. It takes that form. We have conscious experiences. The light of consciousness shines, and that is why it renders everything conscious for us. So this is how the Chit aspect of Brahman manifests in us. And the Ananda aspect of Brahman, you see, wherever you are, if you stay there for a considerable period of time, say 1 week, 2 weeks, or anywhere you go, you will start liking the place, you will start liking the people. Anything you see, you concentrate on, you will start liking it. Why? Because a conscious entity has moved there. Everything becomes dear when a conscious entity is there. To that entity, everything becomes dear. Everything that you perceive, apply your mind for some time, it will become dear to you. So this Ananda aspect of Brahman expresses in us as dearness, love. This is Bhakti. The Ananda aspect of Satchidananda Brahman is what is called Bhakti. So it is an essential aspect of Brahman. It is the love that we feel in our hearts. Who can deny this? And that is Brahman. That the tattva of that love is Brahman. So you see, Brahman alone is manifested in all these ways. And you can only track all these truths in first person. It's not a matter of believing or even a scriptural inference. You can only track it in first person. How does consciousness feel to me? It feels as these aspects. So that is why we say Jnana and Bhakti are always interlinked. They come to us together. In the Bhagavad Gita, I think, Bhagavad Gita we consider as the very essence of the Upanishads. It has the best expressions of both Bhakti and Jnana. The essence of the Upanishads is that. So there you find it in Sri Krishna's own words. He says, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukruti norjuna artho jignasu artharthi jnani cha bharatarshava. Tesham jnani nitya yukta eka bhakti vishishyate. Priyo hi jnaninotyartham aham sachamama priyaha. Udara sarva evaite jnani atmaiva mematam. See, 4 types of people approach me, Krishna says. Who are they? Artha, the one who is distressed, Jignasu, the inquirer, Artharthi, who is desirous of something, and the Jnani. Amongst these, the Jnani is the Nitya Yukta Eka Bhakti Vishishyate. He is characterized by being established in contact with me all the time, in touch with my consciousness and with Eka Bhakti, and hence he is dearest to me. Udara Sarva Evaite, all of them are good people, but the Jnani is my very self. So you see the beautiful expression of Bhagwan himself, God himself saying, the Jnani is verily myself, and so he is dearest to me. So you see, Bhakti and Jnana are not to be taken as 2 different things. Let me give you another beautiful example from we have only another 2 minutes, I think. So let me give you one beautiful expression from the Bhagavatam. Here, Parikshit is asking Shukdev. At one point, he asks him, you see, the Lord comes to establish righteousness. But we saw that in Krishna Leela, the Lord did many things which our society may not approve. Like, for example, playing his flute at night and all the gopis going to him at night. So then, what is an explanation to this? That time, Shukdev tells Parikshit, oh Parikshit, you have not understood this Leela. You know, the gopis' hearts were very pure. In them was only Krishna Bhav. So the Lord saw his own Bhav in another, and so he danced with himself. From his standpoint, he danced only with himself. There is no gopi there. And even from the gopi's standpoint, they say in the Gopi Gita, you will find this. How did they see Sri Krishna? They saw him as Na khalu gopika nandanod bhavan akhila dehinam antaratvadrik. You are not the mere son of Yashoda and Nanda. You are the Atman in all beings. And that is why that Leela took place. So we must not try to understand all this with mundane eyes. It is a divine Leela. Sri Ramakrishna tells us, you have come to eat mangoes. You have come to taste the flavor of the Lord, of Bhagavad Bhav. So hold him dear in your heart. Just through bhakti, you can attain the highest jnana. Sri Ramakrishna says this so many times in Kathamrit, Gospel. Just through the power of bhakti, you can attain the knowledge of Brahman. Usually the bhakta doesn't want the knowledge of Brahman, but you can get it just through bhakti also, Sri Ramakrishna says. So all we need to do is we need to know the way to the orchard of mangoes. That much jnana we should have, and then plunge into bhakti sadhana, because that is the crux of the matter, to lift our whole energy towards the highest purpose of God realization. This is possible only when our emotion aligns with our analytical intellect and backs it up, so that we are able to touch pure consciousness. That is why Sri Ramakrishna says, use bhakti as a means to the highest. And Sri Ramakrishna makes it also very clear when he tells Narendranath, you see that in that incident where Narendranath is sitting in front of Thakur, Thakur looks into his eyes and says, When will you dive into the ocean of God? Suppose imagine you are a fly and there's a cup of syrup in front of you. How will you taste that syrup? Then Narendranath says, why? I will sit in a corner of that cup and stick my neck out into the syrup and drink it. Because if I go further, I may drown in that syrup. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, Nare, not like that. God is the syrup of consciousness. He is the supreme bliss of consciousness. If you dive into that bliss, into consciousness, you cannot become unconscious. You will not die. You will become immortal. You must dive into it. This is knowledge. Become one with it. Being and becoming. Knowledge is of this nature in Vedanta. And you can only know it if you know the taste of syrup and dive into it. So bhakti. And there's no fear of drowning into it. You will verily become that. Nobody becomes unconscious by diving into consciousness. You only become completely, fully conscious. If this little bit of intermittent conscious experience is giving us so much delight, what to speak of Brahma Jnana? It is possible through bhakti. This is the great message of Sri Ramakrishna. As I understand it, there are so many things which can be said about Jnana Mishrita Bhakti. My time is up. I pray that Sri Ramakrishna bless us with this knowledge of the Supreme gained through the path he himself has given, the combination of bhakti and jnana. May he bestow his grace on us that we may achieve the highest goal of human life. Jai Thakur, Jai Ma.
Thank you, Mataji. That was truly magnificent. You have answered so many of our inner conflicts and questions already. We are getting flooded with questions, and please continue to do so for all the revered speakers that we have amongst us today. Are you okay to take one or two questions, Mataji? Would that be okay?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you. So the first question that I have got is from Shonali Dotto from Kolkata, and she asks, in pursuit of a spiritual life while living a worldly one, what's the most practical way to keep a spiritual approach in your day-to-day practice? What should we be doing and what we shouldn't?
Yes. Well, I would recommend bhakti, the bhakti marg. When you have to pursue a spiritual life while you are in the world, the practice of bhakti on an everyday basis, like practices like japa, prayer, some form of devotion, worship, all these are very ennobling. They just lift the mind to a higher consciousness. So this is what is usually recommended. Along with that, the study of the scriptures. If you just read the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna every day, in a few years' time, your entire mind will change. It is a spiritual practice in itself. So simple methods are there. Everything is available to us. Now, how much we do it is all that matters.
That's absolutely brilliant. I try to read a couple of pages of Kathamrita every day as well, and it's such a befitting end to the day, I feel. I'm going to take the liberty of asking you one question, Mataji. You've just mentioned that everything is in the realms of Shakti. So could the power of positivity, and for that purpose, that of negativity as well, be generated through Shakti invoked in us?
Yes. You see, the power behind your thought, whether it is positive or negative, is Shakti. And this power manifests in you as your vital energy. Thought is the highest expression of your vital energy. So thought, you can make it positive or negative. The power behind it is only the Divine Mother. The more we make it positive, the more it will be possible to go to the benign aspects of Shakti through that thought.
Absolutely.
The more it will be possible to cultivate bhakti and the higher values of life through our positive thought. And if we empower negativity, like many people do it unconsciously through fear, anger, whatever, then you go into depression, you go into anxiety, all these problems. So what we are empowering from within is, again, it's all Shakti. Our Icha, Kriya, Jnana, everything is Shakti.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very true. Mataji, we've still got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to be very greedy and ask you one last question. As I say, we've been flooded with questions. So Shudip Ghosh from Kolkata asks, Thakur talks a lot about Vigyani in Kathamrita. Could you give us a bit more of light on that, please?
Vijnan,
Vigyan and Vigyani, yes.
yes. So Vigyan is the Vishesh Jnana that Thakur talks of. See, he has put it very simply for us to understand. From the Leela, if you touch the Nitya and come back to the Leela with the knowledge of the Nitya, nourished by it, it is called Vijnan. You touch the highest point of realization, Advaita, and bring that knowledge into everyday life. You are nourished by it. Sri Ramakrishna says, some have heard of milk, some have seen milk, but some have drunk milk and got nourished by it. Those who just hear of milk, they are the practitioners. One who sees milk is the jnani. He has touched a point. He knows milk. But one who has drunk it and got nourished by it and uses it is the vijnani. He comes back and is able to give that taste, that joy to the whole world. So Vijnan is a very important stage, you can say, one of the highest stages of spiritual unfoldment, which comes even after Jnana. These are all matters of sadhana.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mataji. It has been overwhelming listening to you, and we are blessed. We were blessed to have you here, and hope to have you back here again at some point. So please keep us in your blessings, and pranam to you on behalf of everyone from Scotland and worldwide.
Namaste to everyone.
Pranam, Mataji. Right. So moving on, Thakur once said, "Who may be called a Paramhanshu? He who, like a swan, can take the milk from a mixture of milk and water, leaving aside the water. He who, like an ant, can take the sugar from a mixture of sugar and sand, leaving aside the sand." Such were his Gospels, and to tell us more about such Gospels of Thakur, we have now our second revered speaker of the day, Shami Shantatmanandaji. Shamiji is a senior monk of the Ramakrishna order and presently heads the Delhi Center of Ramakrishna Mission. Shamiji is a pioneering influence on women empowerment in India and engineered setting up an NGO in the suburbs of Kolkata called Sharoda Seva Sangho, which is managed by more than 100 trained volunteers. He is also deeply committed to the spreading of value education amongst the youth, especially the school and college students, and was instrumental in devising programs telecast over CNN, IBN, and Doordarshan's national channel and propagating the life-giving message of Swami Vivekananda amongst the youth. I'll share one little trivia with you. It was Shamiji who advised us to start the Scotland Pathachakra in a few years back, which is, as you can see, is gathering force. So many thanks to you, Shamiji, and warm welcome to you. Pranam, Shamiji. We are blessed to have you here, and thank you for joining us. And over to you.
Yeah. Om Tavakatamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibhiriritam Kalmashapaham Sravana Mangalam Srimadadatam Bhuvikranandiye Bhurida Janaha. It's a matter of great joy and delight to be with all of you, although through webinar this beautiful evening. I have to speak about the Kathamrita or the Gospel of Ramakrishna, an extremely difficult subject. Although Gaurav spoke many words by way of introduction, My introduction is I'm a humble student of the Gospel of Ramakrishna. A great poet of Karnataka, his name is Kuvempu. He was given the Gyanpith and several national awards. When the Kannada translation of the Kathamrita was about to be published, they requested him to write an introduction. And I would share with you some of the things that he wrote about the gospel. He said, the gospel is a veritable temple on one's palm, a veritable place of pilgrimage on one's palm. But unlike a temple or a place of pilgrimage, there is no chance of this getting polluted or dilapidated, etc. etc. He says the home that houses this gospel will itself become a temple. The hand that holds it will be holding the very lotus feet of the Lord. The tongue on which its letters roll will be savoring nectar itself. It's a repository of bliss. It's the ocean of peace. It's the manna of divine knowledge. It's a friend that stands by you in the hour of trial. It is a guru that at the moment of overwhelming joy counsels humility and devotion and makes you feel that you are an offering at the Lord's feet. It's the torch that shows you the way in darkness. It's the staff to lean upon while trudging on an uneven path. You know, it's the quintessence of Vedas and the Upanishads. After reading it, even the most ordinary literate need not feel jealous of any scholar, nor does he feel inferior to any scholar of eminence. On the other hand, he feels that by the grace of God, none is more blessed than himself. He attains peace and fulfillment. So, he says, never before had the God incarnated in such an approachable form, nor had the voice of the Lord shaped itself into a book that could be read and understood by the most ordinary of men and women. I think that is an extraordinary introduction about the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Actually, the whole thing, came about in an extraordinary way. The compiler of gospel was M. or Master Mahashaya or Mahendranath Gupta. Everywhere he has completely concealed himself and he has only used the letter M to indicate the author. In fact, in the gospel, in many places, it's his own questions, his own observations, quite often, camouflaged as a visitor, a devotee, and so on and so forth. He had a very troubled life because of the misunderstanding between his wife and his mother. So, along with his wife, he had gone to his nephew's house in Baranagar virtually to commit suicide. One day he had gone out visiting a few places, and towards the end of the day, his friend Sindhu said, there is a beautiful place on the bank of the Ganges nearby. A Paramahamsa lives there. Would you like to go to that place? Immediately he agreed. You see, at every step you will feel that there is a divine dispensation connected with this book. Because, it was end of the day, he must have been tired. His mind was also in such a condition. The normal reaction would be, yes, enough we had, let us go. But he agreed. When they came to Dakshineswar, they straight came to the room of Sri Ramakrishna. Just standing outside, what Yam saw was stunning. Sri Ramakrishna was talking to a few devotees who were assembled there. But the atmosphere was so extraordinary, so intense. Yam felt as if Sukadeva was himself discoursing on the Bhagavata. And he felt that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was conducting kirtans. So, you can imagine the first impression. It was so stunning, so discoursed on the Bhagavata to Raja Parikshit. So, there is a connect. Here, Yam was also about to end his life, but then he has just then found an elixir in the form of Sri Ramakrishna. Several things happened in that first meeting, but later on, Yam used to take short, brief notes, just notings, so to say, of whatever he used to hear from Sri Ramakrishna. You see how this scripture, this extraordinary scripture, has been constructed, so to say. It is not all that Sri Ramakrishna said, and how this is, meant for the entire humanity, especially for the householders, because Yam used to come only on holidays. So, whatever Sri Ramakrishna talked intimately, very personally with his future monastics are not recorded here. Whatever is recorded are all largely Sri Ramakrishna's conversations with Yam and others in his presence, and they are extremely useful and beneficial to householders. Of course, Sri Ramakrishna's life itself is a harmony of several dimensions, not only harmony of religions, harmony between householders and sannyasis. Here is the sannyasi of sannyasins living in white clothes and, having a wife to add to that. So, it's impossible to describe all that in such a short time that has been allotted to us. Maybe on some other occasion, we shall have a greater discussion. So, in the Kathamrita or Gospel, you will feel that several things are repeated again and again. Once even Hriday asked Sri Ramakrishna, "Uncle, why do you repeat again and again?" Sri Ramakrishna asked, "Why not?" In Bhagavata, there's a saying, "Swadu swadu pade pade." More and more you listen, more and more you get in contact, it's more and more enjoyable, it's more and more sweet. So, Sri Ramakrishna used to repeat several things. Why? Because, he knew that human mind is forgetful. They emphasize certain important things so that they get deeply embedded in M's heart, and through him it is conveyed or relayed to the entire humanity. So he used to repeat. Not only that, he would ask M. Mahavishnu Maharaj himself says during his conversations, whenever Sri Ramakrishna used to go to Calcutta or other places, most often times Yam would also be present there. When you would say something very important, you would specifically ask Yam, "Did you understand?" Several times you'd ask him a few days later, "What did I speak that day?" Yam would repeat. Sri Ramakrishna would say, "Yes, you have understood well." And sometimes he would say, "No, that's not what I said." So not only did he speak everything to him, he made sure that Yam understood. So he told him several times, repeated, made him understand, so that it would get deeply entrenched in his heart. Mahavishnu Maharaj himself says this gospel was not just written like that. Here and there, just notings. And when the last volume, actually M published 5 volumes in Bengali. The last volume was published something like 46 years after the Mahasamadhi of Sri Ramakrishna. But you see the descriptions, they are virtually as if M had videographed everything that had happened. All those present, whatever was said by anyone, everything is appearing against each name specifically. When did Sri Ramakrishna smile? When did he laugh? When others laughed? When did Sri Ramakrishna chide somebody? In minutest detail, everything is there. How could someone write all that? The first volume came out something like, 13, 14 years after the Mahasamadhi of Sri Ramakrishna. And over the next 30 years, he brought out 4 more volumes. Mahavishnu Maharaj himself says, he used to meditate for long hours. And through meditation, from the depths of his heart, churning whatever was there, Master Moshe finally brought out this extraordinary piece of literature, a great scripture. the future scripture of mankind, so to say. It's a manual of life in such a simple language, a solution to some of the most ancient problems of humanity. Everything is there. So it's so beautiful and so enchanting. So, from Sri Ramakrishna, Yam came to know that knowing God is knowledge and not knowing Him is ignorance or agyan. So, this is, as Sri Ramakrishna himself used to say, the coin or mudra of an ancient era would not be valid now. We need the current coin, the legal tender. This gospel of the Kasamrita is a legal tender of the time, you might say. Sri Ramakrishna himself tells his devotees, the rishis and munis, they did such intense tapasya, such extraordinary tapasya. None of you have either the time or the health or the capacity to do all that. It's not possible to do all that for you. But is there no way, no hope? He says, no. In Kali, it is Naradiya Bhakti. It's because people are so weak, they are so body-minded, depending so much on food, Annagata Pran. So he says, now, pure a bhakti, devotion, coupled with surrender, self-surrender, so to say. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna, how to get that? He teaches again and again how to pray. He says, tell the Lord, tell Mother, how to get you. I have no sadhana. I am without sadhana. I am without jnana. I do not know. Please tell me. Please reveal me. Reveal to me yourself. I do not know how to do, even pray. So that's why he says, but then, if one gets even a glimpse or a little, one is taken to extraordinary heights. We know the famous story of Dhruva. He was ill-treated by his father. He was kind of disregarded and brushed aside. So seeking justice, he was advised by his mother to go and pray to Lord Narayana or Bhagavan Vishnu in the forest. He went. But when the Lord appeared, deeply pleased by the efforts of this young boy, he said, what can I ask now? What I have got is far more than I could ever imagine. That's why Gita, it says, Yam labhva chaparam labham mannite na adhikam tataha yasmin sito na dukke na guruna api vichalyate. After getting that, there's nothing to be aspired for beyond that. And that, being established there, even the greatest of sorrows or dukkha or sufferings do not touch you. So, it's that way, even in a small way, if you could get a glimpse, the way is, through this Kathamrita. But, the scripture is so extraordinary. The more and more you read it, more and more you get insights. More and more you get new revelations. There is no end to all that you can unearth. That's why, Sri Ramakrishna, that famous Bengali song, Dubu 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 Dub Sagare, Amarmon, Talathal, Patal, Kujli, Papire Prem Ratna, then dive deep. At the bottom of the ocean, you get extraordinary gems. So he says, dive deep. If one can dive deep, that's how it's possible to get more and more out of this Kathamrita. There's a tradition in the Ramakrishna order. There are monks, many of the monks, they read it every day. Some of senior monks have read it so many times. Someone else is reading in the night class. The young brahmachari is making a mistake. From a distance, the sadhu has got it by heart, is correcting him from a distance. No, read properly. That kind of a mastery, because they've read it so many times. It's so easy to read, so captivating, so attractive. That's why, this Mangalacharam, Tavakatamatam is so beautiful, taken from Bhagavata. How, in one sloka, everything is summed up, how extraordinary it is. Because, there's so much to talk about. But then, I will give you a little glimpse of how extraordinary it is. In this Sri Ramakrishna is very clear. He says that you don't have to really completely give up the world. You don't have to renounce everything. But then, again and again, people like Master Maharshi, particularly Master Maharshi himself, ask him, is it possible? Is it possible to realize God? Because in Kathamrita, if you see, every second page, Ramakrishna says, the one and only goal of life is God realization. So, it is being asked, how is it possible? Is it possible for a householder? Because, Master Maharshi gets this great doubt again and again. Because, in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna, he feels something so extraordinary, so transformational, so wonderful. But when he goes back home, it's the same story. His mind goes down, is unable to withstand the difficulties, problems, the pulls of samsara. So he's wondering whether it's really possible for someone living in samsara to realize God. Ramakrishna assures again and again, yes, it's possible. Yes, it is possible, and gives several disciplines. Now, a simple technique which Ramakrishna used to advise. Now, you just look at this and then probably I'll have to leave the floor for question and answers because there's no time. He says, you live in the family like the servant in a rich man's house. Ramakrishna says, the maid servant in a rich man's house relates so beautifully those children to the children of the owner or the in charge of the house. Says, my Ram, my Hari, etc. But she knows her mind, holds in her mind that these people not really her own in a true sense, and her old children back home in the village are her really true near and dear ones. So he says like that, you live in the world, do everything, but you keep your mind on God, and that's how you can live beautifully in this world. Very easily said and so difficult to do. So, if you just look at this example, you get, many insights. First of all, the way this maid servant relates to those children, is there any hypocrisy in it? Is there any untruth in it? No. She's so fond of those children. In fact, in many of those homes later on, when those children grow up, they relate to that maid who brought them up rather than their own parents. They become so close. So when she says, my Hari, my Ram, so really she has a true love and affection for them. So, in the world, that way you can truly participate. You need not be hypocritic. But then, Sri Ramakrishna says, she knows in her heart of hearts that her own children are back home in the village. So, however much she may relate to these children, she knows that if she makes a mistake, she can be dismissed just at the drop of a hat. Then she would have to leave everything behind and go. There's looking back. However much you might love those children, there won't be any concession, and the landlord would not agree. She would have to go certainly. So, while doing all that, she knows, because, while she has a wonderful relationship with these children, in her heart of hearts, there is no, lack of clarity or doubt about the children back home. She knows that they are truly her own. So that way, Sri Ramakrishna says, you must have that kind of a certainty, that kind of a relationship with the Lord. While you might participate in this world, just as the housemaid knows that her own children back home are her real dear ones, if you also know that God alone is your truly dear and near one, then it's possible for you to live in the world and not be, bothered or worried or affected by whatever is happening here. So, now while this example is so attractive and so easy, why are we not able to live up to it? Because the housemaid, although she mixes with the children, she knows clearly there is a dividing line between her and these children. She might relate to them wonderfully, but this is so transitory, so temporary, this can come crashing down anytime. But do we feel that way about our activities in the world? We don't have even a trace of doubt that all that we do in this world is extremely permanent, extremely real, extremely long standing. So, the first condition for us to move towards God is to feel that whatever we do in this world, however attractive they might look, they are transitory, they are impermanent. They can crash, they would end. Only when we develop that uncertainty, which is the first step, then only we can think of the other. So, she is absolutely sure of the relationship with these children and that they might end anytime, they are temporary. Similarly, we must develop that kind of a dispassion or understanding of whatever that is happening in this world, whatever we do. Only when we do that, it's possible for us to think beyond. And not only that, she knows that those children might be far away. They may be living in the village, maybe hundreds of miles away, but she knows that they are there, truly her own, and that there won't be any difficulty for her if she goes there, even after many days, anytime, instantaneously they would relate to her, hug her, and they would be sweet, dear, and near to her. In the same way, God might look far away for us for the time being. He might be, millions of miles away. But do you feel that, yes, supposing, some way we do something, we can get connected to Him, feel close to Him, feel dear to Him? So, what is the secret of that? How does she feel so safe, so sure about the children back home? It's because the relationship between her and those children is absolutely clear. There is no doubt. So, in the same way, if we can build some relationship with God, our own Ishta, our own that object of adoration or worship, that is the certainty that and that alone will help us go forward in our sadhana. So, just a small example, live like a housemaid in a rich man's house, but that contains this much, even much more. We can talk much more about it, but I don't think I have time. I've already probably exceeded my time by a couple of minutes. So, the idea is this is, as we traditionally said about the Shastras, Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. We must read. Hearing Sravana is actually, we can read by ourselves every day a few pages. Then Manana. Probably the next day or the days after that also, just try to ruminate, think, reflect what was read, what does it mean, what is the inner implication, what are the learnings, Manana, then Nididhyasana. More and more as we contemplate, as we dive deeper, you would unearth greater and greater hidden gems from the gospel. And this is one sure, complete book for our life. Ramakrishna himself says to fight a big battle you need, weapons and so on. But to kill oneself, small pin is enough. So, for our own life, for our own redemption, this gospel is more than enough that will completely take care of all our spiritual needs. Only thing is we should make a sincere effort, make a beginning, try to become a sadhaka in our own humble way. That's the beginning to get closer to Sri Ramakrishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shamiji. That was absolutely, truly wonderful. I've always felt myself that whenever I read Kathamrita, that I almost feel as if Thakur lives in Kathamrita. You can sense him, you can sense his smile, you can almost feel his words. So that was truly divine and beautiful. Are you happy to take a few questions?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much. And I'll just keep reminding the audience, keep sending your questions. This is a momentous opportunity for you to ask questions. So the first question is from Shumona Sinha in Edinburgh. Shumona. And Shumona is asking, how do we balance household and spiritual life in our day-to-day practice?
Yeah, actually, it's a very difficult task. But then, Sri Ramakrishna himself says, if you take one step, I will come forward 10 steps. First and foremost, do we really realize the need for a deep spiritual life? Is the first step. Do you feel some dispassion, some dissatisfaction for the world? Yes, I have had enough of this world. A little dissatisfaction, atrupti. Initially, it is really not possible to do that way. But make a beginning, make a sincere beginning. You will find in an amazing way that balance is being achieved for you by Sri Ramakrishna himself. What he wants is deep longing, intense sincerity to begin with. Initially, one might feel it is 90% world and 10% God. But if that 10% is, done sincerely, it's possible, slowly it will, in an amazing way, without oneself realizing it, that percentage would keep on increasing. And one day it may be 90, 10, or even 100 complete spiritual life. Also, it's possible. But then that intensity, that sincerity, very it's so important. God does not look at our quantity, he looks at our heart, at our quality. A simple prayer, there is a very famous story. There is a washerman. He was whole day busy washing this and that. He had no time. He was a poor man. He had to work very hard for his livelihood. But at the end of the day, he would just say, "Oh my Lord, I did not have any time. Just I'm offering you a pranam," and he would go to bed. There was someone else, when Pandit was day and night, he was only doing scriptural discourse, etc., etc. But after his death, he was taken to Naraka, whereas this washerman was taken to Swarga. And the Pandit questioned, he said, the difference is the sincerity. You did so much, but your heart was elsewhere. But this man had no time. He just offered his only humble pranams every day, but the sincerity of his heart was such that, I felt that he was quite near to me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's such a beautiful explanation. I've been told that my voice is cutting off a little bit. Can you hear?
Hello? No, I'm not. Your question is not clear to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it's clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So the next question that I have got. I'm sorry. I think the network is quite. Shamiji, if you just give me a minute, I'm just going to try and log back in to see if we can just sort this.
I'm able to hear you all right.
Okay, great. So the next question is from Orijit. Sorry, it's from Shayan Mukherjee. And Shayan Mukherjee is asking, Ramakrishna may be the only person in Indian subcontinent who successfully managed to merge Shakta and Vaishnava philosophy. Would like to know how philosophically these two paths have been reconciled.
No, it's not very clear. You're audible, but not very clear.
Can you hear me better now, Shamiji?
Yeah.
Super. So I'll repeat the question. The question is, Shayam Mukherjee asks, Ramakrishna may be the only person in Indian subcontinent who successfully managed to merge Shakta and Vaishnava philosophy. I would like to know how philosophically these two paths have been reconciled through Kathamrita.
Yeah, see, that's a very technical question. Actually, it's very difficult to completely, segregate and clearly say that Sri Ramakrishna, in his own life, he did all the disciplines according to the path of the Shakti worship, according to Vaishnava also. That's how he harmonized everything in his life. But then, if you, in many places, for example, he says, Brahman and Shakti abed. So, that is that like the serpent which is coiled and which is moving about. That's how he brings Vedanta and, that idea together, Dvaita and Advaita. So, in Kathamrita, there are not so much of specific discussions about Shakti, traditional Shakti worship as such. But, again, his whole life is built on mother worship, mother as a principle. So if you take it as representing the Shakti form, he clearly says the devotion to mother. Mother for him is not an anthropomorphic figure. It is not the Durga, Kali, Lakshmi or something. Mother is a power. So, through that mother power, the devotion to her with intense prayer, it's possible to go far ahead. For example, in the Vaishnava tradition, the greatest idea is idea of Sharanagati, Prapatti, they say. Their absolute self, a kind of self-surrender. Sri Ramakrishna's main weapon is this absolute surrender, totally surrender yourself to God. So this surrender to power called mother, which is the Shakti's embodiment of Shakti or Shakti power. That's why he has combined all that. In fact, throughout, even in his sadhana also you'll find again, he says that it's possible to combine all that. So that is how he has not gone into those technicalities. He has given a very simple solution to our life, our spiritual life. He says, do this much is enough, you can go forward. So, prayer was his greatest weapon. Through prayer, approaching this power called mother, he says that it's possible to go ahead in spiritual life. In that sense, you can say he has combined the idea of Shakti with the other idea of surrender, complete surrender to God, which is one of the basic or the most important tenet of the ideas of Vaishnavas.
That's absolutely fantastic explanation, Shani. I'll ask you one last question, if that's okay.
Yeah. Me, it's okay.
Thank you. So Shantanu Shorkar from Aberdeen asks, as a grihi, how to perform solitude at work or home. Thakur had talked about being with God and have some solitude. How can we do that in our day-to-day life and practice?
It's possible. We all get leave. I mean, not we, sadhus don't get. It's much more difficult for us. But in your job, you definitely have holidays. So out of that, don't always go with family and others if you are a sadhaka. You must definitely, there is one occasion in a year, at least few days, you can virtually be physically alone. It's possible. That's one thing. Even it's not possible. Once you do, and afterwards, if you develop a culture, so in your own house, however small it might be, you must have a dedicated corner or a place which is specially meant for worship, prayer, japa, etc. Going to that very place would create a sense of solitude in your mind, because we are all completely made by our own thoughts, our mind, etc. So the more and more you associate such a place with worship, prayer, meditation, etc., that place would become the place of solitude for you. And then initially, at least to start with, clearly dedicate the first part, the moment you get up, before getting into any transactional work, set apart that first half an hour or 40 minutes completely for solitude, sadhana in solitude. That's how you can begin. Slowly you can intensify. As you develop, then you develop more and more capacity, that so even when amidst others are there, you'll have the capacity to switch off, go into solitude. Others might not even notice. You can definitely not participate in anything later on. But initially, it has to be a very specific effort. Sometimes definitely take out, go separately to a place and spend time in sadhana exclusively. Don't take others with you. And then coming back, start like this. At the beginning of the day, before you get into anything, this should be the first. Just wash, clean yourself, go to the place, light a small lamp or burn an incense and sit. Sit quietly. There's the first thing. Sitting, don't have to do anything. Even you don't have to meditate. Just sitting all by yourself, allowing the mind to settle down. That is the first beginning of sadhana. If you develop half an hour, 40 minutes like that, that would, kind of feed you for the rest of the day. And slowly you can make it twice a day. Maybe before going to bed again, you can go into that kind of a solitude. And slowly you will develop the capacity to detach yourself and go into solitude even when you are at home, or perhaps even when you are at work. But that would take much longer time. Initially we can begin like this.
That's such a beautiful explanation, Shamiji. On that note, I might just ask one question. You know, traditionally, bhaktas have this almost a tussle that, when you are meditating, you have to have that blank mind so that your worldly thoughts are not coming to your mind, and that's almost an impossible feat to achieve for mortals like us. So any advice on how to progress on that and what we
I
can
know.
do?
See, those who are initiated, they have one method. Even otherwise, I can tell you in a general way. When we said, we make the mistake of immediately trying to figure out the rupa, etc., etc., etc. First, one has to simply quiet. Even Holy Mother also says, you have to sit quietly and allow the mind to wander for some time. Don't try to restrict it, don't try to direct it, don't try to weed away whatever might come, let it come. Slowly, after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and if you practice it for months, you'll find that the mind slowly settling down to a certain extent. That is the time you must start meditating. Supposing you have been taught, you are given a form, etc., to meditate, you can have that, or you can do other Advaitic meditations also. But initially, first 15 20 minutes is to be given just for allowing the mind to settle down. Just let it go anywhere. You make yourself a kind of witness and try to watch where all the mind is trying to go. Don't try to direct it, don't try to stop it, don't try to refuse. Let it do anything it wants. You will find that over a period of time, slowly, the moment, particularly if you go and sit in a place which is earmarked for such kind of a sadhana, you'll find that in 10, 15, 20 minutes, the mind would certainly be much calmer and which would enable you to meditate much more deeply.
Thank you so much. That is an absolute wonderful explanation, and we should all practice on this. Thank you. I want to thank you, Shamiji. You had been a guiding force behind this Scotland group, and please keep us in your blessings, and keep blessing us so that we can continue to gather further momentum to bring Thakur and Ma to our lives. So please just bless us.
Because all of you are living in such a faraway place where things are so difficult, you can rest assured that Thakur will be much more gracious, considerate, compassionate towards all of you than many of us who are living in a very advantageous position. I only pray that Thakur Man Swamiji may bless all of you and help this Part Chakra society grow from strength to strength. Thank you very much for a wonderful evening. Namaskar.
Pranam, Swamiji, pranam. ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন, ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন, তলাতল পাতাল খুঁজলে, তলাতল পাতাল খুঁজলে পাবি রে সেই রত্ন ধন, পাবি রে সেই রত্ন ধন, ডুব 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 রূপ সাগরে আমার মন. The treasure that Thakur talks about here, the Ratnodhan, is about bhakti, submission, and knowledge. And to enlighten us on this and how to apply this on our daily lives, we now have our third speaker with us, Swami Sarvasthanandaji, who is going to talk us on the relevance of Sri Ramakrishna's life and message in our daily lives. Swamiji is the minister in charge of the Ramakrishna Vedanta Center in UK. Since June 1987, he served in the Ramakrishna Ashram, Rajkot in India in various capacities for more than 30 years, and is also the editor of the international journal Vedanta published by the UK. Swamiji represented the Ramakrishna Mission in a UNESCO conference on youth and their social impact held in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia in May 2017, and then in Tunisia in September 2018. Since 2017, he has also been appointed as one of the 3 official monastic representatives of Ramakrishna Mission to the UNESCO events wherever they are held from time to time in different countries of the world. So, with my humble pranam, I would like to welcome Swamiji. Pranam, Swamiji.
Namaste, namaste.
Punam. Thank you for joining us, and over to you, Shamiji, for your talk. Thank you.
ॐ जननीं शारदां देवीं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रित्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः. So welcome all of you on this very auspicious occasion. We celebrated Sri Ramakrishna's birthday a few days ago according to his Janmatithi, and on 15th, and it is good to see the people, the group which is there in Scotland for quite some time now, the Scotland Vedanta group. They have organized this nice event to discuss the life and message. The topic that has been given to me today to discuss for 25 minutes is the life and message of Sri Ramakrishna and its relevance in our daily life. Now, definitely, any person who embarks upon spiritual life and considers someone to be his or her ideal has to definitely bring his own daily life or his own life or personality as near to the ideal as possible. That is what we expect. If I say Sri Krishna is my ideal or Sri Rama is my ideal, and I choose to worship him, the very reason I worship him is that he is my ideal, he is my role model, and when I worship him, I expect to imbibe some of his qualities in my own life, in my own daily life. So I can't have a sort of compartment that this is my daily life, this is my worship of Sri Ramakrishna, or any ideal I choose for myself, and not be bothered about his life and message. So that is very obvious. So the relevance part of it is obvious. When I say Sri Ramakrishna, his life and message, and its relevance to my daily life, if I have Sri Ramakrishna as an ideal for myself, for my own life, then it should be molded. I may not be able to practice what Sri Ramakrishna did and spoke. He lived his life. His life was his own. His life was his message. We all know that Mahatma Gandhi said very rightly that Sri Ramakrishna's life was a life which enables you to see God face to face. So that was his life, seeing God face to face. And in our daily life or in our life, if seeing God face to face is not our ideal, then Ramakrishna perhaps has no relevance in our life. Then we might go back to square one and say that Sri Ramakrishna, I appreciate his life, I appreciate his message, but he cannot be my ideal because it is too far, or maybe it's almost impossible for me. Let me be happy. Then the question of relevance does not come at all. But I'm talking of those people or those devotees who feel that Sri Ramakrishna's life and message is intensely or extremely relevant in my life. To the extent I feel that, then we can discuss. For others, this discussion is just superficial. It does not serve the purpose. I have to be convinced, or I have to be frank enough to say that I share a common ideal with Sri Ramakrishna, and his life and message are my ideals, and they will inspire my daily life. Only then the question of relevance comes. This is point number one. Now, what was Sri Ramakrishna's life and message? We have to remember this. We have to first try to analyze. And if I ask all of you to give one answer in one word, what was Sri Ramakrishna's life all about? There will be many answers. If I say what was Sri Ramakrishna's life and message in one word, or maybe in one sentence, but preferably one word. So his life and message can be said to be one which was extremely uncomplicated. That means the life that we lead today, our daily life, is full of complications, is full of worldly problems because of our complications. His life was simple, so also was his message. So we have to make a choice. Do we really want to be as uncomplicated or as simple and true to ourselves? Thakur used to use a beautiful phrase in Bengali, man mukh ek kora. So that is a precondition of trying even to understand its Sri Ramakrishna's life and message and its relevance to our daily life. Otherwise, if we are really true to ourselves and we find that his life and message is not something which I can practice and benefit in life, then it is better to be an atheist. As Swamiji says, atheists are more sincere because their man and mukh, that is their what they say and what they do, tally with each other. So when we say Sri Ramakrishna is our ideal, then we have to find if we try to find the relevance of Sri Ramakrishna's life and message in our daily life, then we have to accept some of the basic qualities which he exhibited. And then his message becomes relevant to us. So what was his life? As I said, it was a very simple life. He made religion, as Mahatma Gandhi said, his religion enables us, his life or his message enables us to see God face to face. So if I want to see God face to face, that means if I want to make my life simple or uncomplicated, and if I want to solve the problems, if I feel that there are problems in this world and I want to solve it, then we have to go in for the spiritual solution which he suggested. And all the suggestions, that all the messages he gave through the gospel or through his own life, show that he was simply a child of mother, and he believed, not only believed, he had a firm conviction that realizing God is the only goal of life, and that made his life very uncomplicated. He was one of the most uncomplicated persons to ever live. His knowledge was not second hand, as I very often say that Swami Vivekananda used to say that I wish I did not have this university education because my knowledge is second hand. I got all knowledge by listening to complicated things, made my life more complicated. Whereas Sri Ramakrishna went to the University of Life, the University of Mother. He went to Mother as a simple child and got all the solutions through direct experiences. That's why his life and message have such a powerful impact upon us, because his life was the most uncomplicated one, easy to understand, and definitely, though it may not be very easy to practice, but one which can be practiced without any intellectual pursuit or intellectual capability. One doesn't require a academic scholarship to understand him. One should have a yearning and attune oneself to his life and message. So what are the basic things which he said? Especially when we say our daily life, we mean a life in the world where we have different goals. Our life is not so uncomplicated as his life. His life was uncomplicated because he believed there was only one goal in life. Whereas we, out of ignorance, have several goals in our life. There may be smaller goals, there may be intermediate goals, and through disillusionment, we catch hold of higher and higher goals and prepare ourselves. Then we get convinced that Sri Ramakrishna's life and message is one which will really solve all the problems which we face in our daily life. So, what is the way he suggested to people? And M came to him. He was a householder, as all of you know, and you know the circumstances which forced him to look for some solution. He saw that all his worldly problems have apparently no solutions. And he saw an uncomplicated person in the person of Sri Ramakrishna, a divine person who was so complicated and simple as a child, that he felt foolish. All his intellectual attainments and achievements appeared to be foolish, because he saw that with all my skill, with all my knowledge, I am not able to solve the problems of my daily life. He was about to commit suicide. So, what's the use of all the education? That set him thinking. And accidentally, he came and his life was saved. He came to Sri Ramakrishna, he found a person, and the first question you see he asked was, does he read many books? That's the problem with modern education. We think our books will solve all our problems. Our worldly knowledge or our uh, mm, complicated behavior, which we develop as a result of pursuing lot of worldly things, it makes us more and more complicated. And then we try to find the problems becoming more complicated than we imagined. We try to solve one problem, another problem comes. So finally, we come to the conclusion to these worldly problems, there's no worldly solution possible. But that is only a few people, lucky people, understand. Then they try to find the relevance of such a simple life of Sri Ramakrishna in our own daily life. And then we try to imbibe that ideal to the extent we can. Swami Vivekananda used to say, to the extent we can make the practical as near the ideal, that will help us to benefit from these great personalities. We may not exactly become as uncomplicated, as simple, as God loving, or as spiritual as Sri Ramakrishna, but at least if we have him as an ideal in our day-to-day life, our life has, as a result of meditating on him, thinking about his life and message, it will become simpler and simpler and become less complicated, and finally we will get a solution to our problems. Eternal solution, not temporary solutions. So M humbly asks once, what is the solution to our problems? Then he says, fixing your mind on God. God alone can provide a solution for all your problems. Then M humbly asks, yes, sir, but how may we fix our mind on God? How do we fix our minds on God? Because Sri Ramakrishna's simple life and uncomplicated life knew only one thing, fixing the mind on God and having God realization as the only goal of our life. And all our activities, as Swamiji said, manifest the divinity within, and all the other things will be harmoniously arranged around it. Whatever is necessary in life, Mother or the God whom you worship will arrange it for you. That was the basic simplicity, or you may say the uncomplicated nature of how Sri Ramakrishna approached spirituality. He deliberately, so Swami Vivekananda says, did not go to the university just to show the world that the limitations of the intellect in trying to realize or experience spiritual truths. Spiritual truths can be experienced even without, or maybe without, the proper intellectual background. So we do not, the limitations of the intellect to give direct spiritual experience was one great lesson of the uncomplicated and simple life of Sri Ramakrishna. That's why we find his life very simple, and if we try to practice it in our day-to-day life, then his life and message will become relevant. Then the question is asked, how, sir, may we fix our minds on God? First of all, if God realization is the only goal of life, if freedom or moksha is the only goal of life, God realization means that. So how do you go about achieving? He did not waste time in trying to prove. He just said, these are the methods, you follow it, and this is how I experience, and this is how you will experience in your own life, to the extent you can. So these are the 4 methods, he said. Repeat God's name and sing his glories first. Nam jap kara and bhajan kara, or singing his glories, reading about him. The second thing is keep holy company, and now and then visit God's devotees and holy men. The mind cannot dwell on God if it is immersed day and night in worldliness, in worldly duties and responsibilities. So he is very unequivocally clear about this, that if we can't have God and mammon at the same time, so if we consider Sri Ramakrishna's life and message as relevant, we should not only be as simple and as uncomplicated like him, but accept these simple teachings and directly practice it in our life, day-to-day life. So he says, first is Nirjanvas, repeating God's name and singing his glories, which we cannot do. That's why he says, immediately he says, satsang, keep holy company, and now and then visit God's devotees and holy men, because that creates a wonderful impact in our lives. It is one thing to understand the importance of God realization, importance of spirituality, the importance of spiritual solution in the mind or in the intellect, but another thing to see it being practiced in somebody's day-to-day life. When you see holy people who actually benefit and who actually give concrete results in their life, and you see the kind of life they are leading, then there may be a chance that a little bit of vairagya or a little bit of unworldliness or worldliness I am comparing with complicated life. You see, what is worldliness? People don't like this world because we are living in the world. Worldliness simply means a complicated life. We complicate simple things. Simple things, simplicity, a manmukh ek kora, directly speaking what you believe. But when you are in the world, you have to be, you have to use a lot of cunning. You have to speak something which you don't mean. That's the way of the world. So when Sri Ramakrishna says not to immerse yourself day and night in worldliness, what he means is that we should not be unnaturally obsessed towards the gross things. The grosser we go, the further we go from the spirit. So spirit and the gross nature of the universe, the, the grossness or the attachment to the world or to the gross things takes us away from the spirit. So you can't have God and mammon at the same time. That's what Jesus said. So the mind is something, a link between the spirit and the world on this side, the gross world on this side, and the spirit on the other side, the pure divine spirit full of bliss, whether you call it freedom, whether you call it moksha, the state of Brahman or your Ishta or your Ishvara. There's so many ways of describing God or defining God. So if the mind cannot, Sri Ramakrishna says something very important, that the mind cannot dwell on God if it is immersed day and night in worldliness, in worldly duties and responsibility. That means you have to lessen it. Then the third thing is very important, how to do it practically. It may not be always possible to keep holy company. Whenever you get a chance, and he says, now and then visit holy men. But, and the reason he says is, when you go in their company, you will also be inclined, not just intellectually convinced, but just you will be forced or you will be inspired to practice, to keep the mind on a higher plane. And to that extent, you enjoy holy company, you will be spending less time with the complicated world. So the more you have satsanga, now and then if you have that, then it helps a person who is living in the world to keep his mind and make it dwell on God. The third is, Sri Ramakrishna says, which is very important, is to go into solitude now and then, nirjan vas, as he used to say in Bengali, and then think of God. What is the reason for this? He says to fix the mind on God is very difficult in the beginning unless one practices meditation in solitude. So the reason why one should go into solitude is that having convinced of our ideal, having fixed an ideal, one has to meditate on it sufficiently for a long time. See the simple, uncomplicated message Sri Ramakrishna is giving. He says, unless one practices in solitude, then there is a chance that he will be distracted, because the nature of the world is like that. It's not that he cannot do it. He can do it, but when he is in the initial stages of spiritual life, solitude is extremely necessary so that he does not divert the kind of vairagya which is needed. For vairagya, I have explained in Raj Yoga, Abhyasa and Vairagya are very nicely explained. The concept of Vairagya has to be understood properly. Vairagya means that which, whatever you see, Anushravika, or that which you hear or see. Drushta Anushravika means that which you see and that which you hear, which is liable to distract you. It's not necessary that when you come across gross sense objects, you are distracted. Even hearing about it, Patanjali says, can distract you. So Vairagya has been defined as not trying to create vrittis in the mind. One cannot control the mind. Controlling the mind means lessening the vrittis and focusing it on the divine, on God within, on the divinity within. So Sri Ramakrishna says, when a tree is young, it should be fenced all around, otherwise it may be destroyed by cattle. So that's a very uncomplicated and simple way of explaining that to meditate, then he says, to meditate you should withdraw within yourself or retire to a secluded corner or to the forest. Vane, mone or kone. Vane, kone or mone. If you have a facility to go into the forest where there is less disturbance, there are less people, or there are less distractions, that is fine. But if you can't do that, he knows the practicality. In our daily life, we practically cannot go to the forest unless you live, a forest is bordering your house. You cannot imagine to go in such secluded places, or you may not have a ashrama or some place where it is quiet, where you can visit every day. That may not be possible. So what you should do, you can go to a corner of your own room, which should be for your spiritual practices. Vane, kone, that is corner of your room, or mone. If you can't even do that, at least detach the mind from the world. So this idea of solitude, the internal solitude, not just the external solitude, because when you go to external solitude, if you carry all the samskaras and all the thoughts and all the desires with you, there is a likelihood that your mind will be disturbed even there. You will be worried about something which you have left far far away. You have come away from that, but your mind has carried those things in a very subtle form. So when he talks about solitude, Sri Ramakrishna means that one should withdraw. So this solitude or nirjanvas is the third most important aspect. First is repeating the japa or God's name and singing his glories depending on one's mood and one's aptitude. That is bhakti yoga. That can be termed as bhakti yoga, repeating God's name. So here we see a wonderful harmony of yogas. Keeping holy company now and then and visiting God's devotees and holy men. The mind, that is the second one. Then we going to solitude and thinking of God is Raj Yoga. And then discriminating, then he says, we should always discriminate. Now this is using our buddhi. As I mentioned very often this thing, that our mind is made of several parts. For convenience, it can be divided into different parts. When you say the mind, you have to be specific. Which part of the mind? We say chitta, buddhi, manas and ahankara. There are so many aspects of the mind. The manas is the reactive mind. So when you say the mind has to be calmed down, it is the reactive mind which is to be calmed down. And we use our own minds to calm down this mind. That is the buddhi aspect. The sattvic aspect of the mind, which of the chitta, that helps us to control our mind, to discriminate. So discrimination means viveka, the viveka buddhi between the real and the unreal. What is real? Real and unreal, you may say temporary and the permanent. The permanent is real, the temporary is unreal. God alone is real, the eternal substance, the ideal which you are trying to worship, and all else is unreal, that is impermanent. By discriminating, that is Jnana Yoga, what we normally do is shaking off the impermanent objects from the mind. Now here we have to be very true to oneself. When you say in our daily life, how do we discriminate between real and unreal? We have to be very honest. If the question of relevance comes only if we really believe or we really want God realization or eternal substance which is permanent, which can give us permanent joy, fulfillment, if we are definitely convinced about that by the grace of God, if we believe in that, and if we believe that the permanent, going after the permanent will help us achieve the goal of life, then we have to see which are the things throughout the day, how much of time I spend on running after the temporary, which are not essential. There may be certain things which are very essential in our life. There may be certain things which may be very essential in life, which will help us to survive. Apart from that, how much of time I am spending in running after the impermanent. So, the shaking of the impermanent and holding on to the permanent whenever you get a chance. So, this discrimination should always be kept alive. So, this is Jnana Yoga. So, Sri Ramakrishna says first to Nam Sankirtan, first, that is the first step. To do that, you have to go to holy company, you have to travel a lot. Maybe you have to travel, or you have to read. Keeping holy company, reading books also can be a type of holy company. When you read the gospel, wonderful books, when you read about your Ishta, when you read about God's glories, that also can be holy company if you don't get physical. But there is no replacement, or maybe satsanga is so important. Sri Ramakrishna used to ask him, now and then you have to come. He used to say, maybe it is troublesome for you to travel, because in those days traveling was very difficult. But he used to somehow make arrangements. You see the wonderful love of Thakur. He used to ask the rich devotees to bring some people who cannot afford to have carriage hire to come all the way. So he knew the importance of satsang. A few moments of satsanga can inspire you, which no books can do. Books can help you indirectly, but that satsanga, which gives you a direct experience, a direct taste of spiritual life. For such a person, Sri Ramakrishna says, if one is immersed day and night, if one cannot spare some time in holy company, you can have holy company amongst yourselves. You can, where you will discuss only about God, forgetting all the worries instead of gossiping about the world. So worldly duties and responsibilities are there, but one does not have to spend all our time, the whole day, thinking about that. Whatever is necessary, essential, it is fine, because people who live in the world have to somehow survive. So for that, one can spend time, but rest of the time, if you get a chance to enjoy holy company as much as possible. If you cannot do that, at least go into solitude and think of God. Because as Sri Ramakrishna says, the vrittis have to be controlled. Unless the mind is kept on God, it is likely to be destroyed. The more we keep our mind on temporary things, without discrimination, if we don't have this discrimination, then we will suffer. And finally, the last point, which is very important, which Sri Ramakrishna asked, that is Karma Yoga. We come to Karma Yoga when M humbly asks, I got your points. He is also now becoming very simple. He doesn't want Sri Ramakrishna to explain the philosophy. He had enough of philosophy in his life. He had read many books, but he knew that something is wrong, painfully wrong. Otherwise, why I can't get rid of my misery? Why my miseries are tormenting me to the extent that I have to commit suicide? Why I am suffocating? Why these things are happening to me? So he humbly, now he has become so humble, and he asks, how ought to we live in this world? Now this is relevance of Sri Ramakrishna. Once having accepted the idea of vairagya, the idea of the need for solitude, the need for discrimination, if we don't believe, then it's better to go back to square one. Then Sri Ramakrishna has no relevance in our life. Then we better go after the ideal which we think is very dear to us, and have and finish that experience. That's what Sri Ramakrishna tells very often. When many people used to ask him that, please tell me the way, he says, if I tell you something, are you going to listen? Let the right time come, then you will come to this spiritual life. So there is a basic minimum requirement to even practice spirituality. So one has to be an adhikari. So for that adhikari, some of the important things which Sri Ramakrishna said, going into solitude, discriminating between the real and unreal, temporary and permanent, and giving up the temporary and holding on to the permanent. That is Vairagya. Vairagya is not a complicated word. It's a very simple word. That which remains with you, that which is eternal and everlasting, and that will always remain with you, will never be taken away from you. That which is real, the eternal substance, that alone is real, the other is impermanent. It may be a difficult thing, but one has to keep this buddhi, keep this discrimination, vivek buddhi alive. Now, coming to Karma Yoga, that is as far as Jnana Yoga is concerned. Now, coming to Karma Yoga, the master gives a wonderful example. I heard that Swami Shantatmanji was just mentioning in one of his answers this particular point, but it's worth repeating, because here M is asking him, with all these, if I understand the relevance of Sri Ramakrishna's life and message, and then I try to practice in my day-to-day life, but still I have to live that life. I can't just go away. I can't give up everything. So how to live? So that practical method of Karma Yoga, Sri Ramakrishna is giving now. He says, do all your duties, but keep your mind on God. Live with all, the wife, children, father, mother, and serve them. Treat them as if they were dear to you. Now this point has been explained, so I'm not repeating. Swami Shantatmanji explained it very beautifully. But know in the heart of your hearts that they do not belong to you. Now this is the essence of Karma Yoga. So we can say that these are the wonderful message, 4 essential messages of Sri Ramakrishna to a person who wishes to be as simple, as uncomplicated, and as spiritual, and really wants to solve all the problems of life through the practice of spirituality. So relevance, again, I will repeat. I have, I think, a few minutes. I think I have, yes, I'll conclude now. We have 10 minutes for question answers. You can ask. But when we say relevance, first we have to find out if they are relevant to my daily life. Now, let us be very honest. I am repeating this again because there's no point in discussing about the relevance of Sri Ramakrishna if we don't accept the ideal, accept his simple life, accept the uncomplicated way with which he led his life, made things very simple. You see his life and his teachings are very simple, and when we try to apply it in our life, we find our lives are so complicated. We have complicated it. We have complicated it because we have created so many desires, so many unnecessary things, so many impermanent objects are occupying our attention right now. That's why when Swami Vivekananda came to the West, his Guru Bhai said, why did you not talk about Sri Ramakrishna? He said, where were the people who were ready to become simple and uncomplicated as he was? They were so complicated in their own pursuits. They had so many complicated ways of holding on to and convincing people that these impermanent objects, these impermanent pursuits, these gross things are so important in life. This materialism was so deeply imprinted on their minds that their mind could not think that there is a simple life possible. To live simply, to have only one ideal, to live an uncomplicated life and follow these 4 methods of Nirjanvas, for that one should have a kind of preliminary disgust for the life, for the world. Maharaj, I heard Maharaj was mentioning that unless we get convinced of the transitoriness or the uselessness to some extent of the world, the impermanent, we know that it is impermanent, but we still cling to it. So that clinging, if it is not given up for at least when we practice spirituality, we have to give it up so that we can practice, make Sri Ramakrishna's life and message relevant in our life. That is why Swami Vivekananda would rarely speak about his master, because he knew this strong message or this wonderful message would find very few takers, because people are so engrossed, or you may say attracted towards these temporary things, and they have made their life so complicated that it will take a lot of time for them to give up these attachments to these smaller things. So Sri Ramakrishna gives a wonderful solution. He says, now you can't give up your duties. You're already attached. You're engrossed. You are having so many responsibilities. But if you treat these people whom you have to, because of your the children, father, mother, you're living in the world, so all these relations are attaching to you. But if you treat them as if they are very dear to you, but from the heart of your hearts, know in the heart of your hearts that they do not belong to you. They are temporary, they can be taken away anytime. They do not exist eternally. The only person who will eternally be with me is my own. Uh, the only part of my personality is my Atman, or my uh, innermost divinity which is there, and the Ishta whom I worship as the manifestation of that eternal substance, or the eternal Brahman who has taken the form of my Ishta. That alone is a permanent companion who will be with me through thick and thin, whatever be the situation in life. Whereas the other people, I will love them, I will work for them because they are connected with me. uh, I have some duties and responsibilities towards them, but treat them as if they are very dear to you. See, these words are very important, but know in the heart of your hearts that they do not belong to you. Like the maid servant, Sri Ramakrishna used to give this example that the maid servant loves the child of the children of those people, who the family whom in whose house she is working. She loves them dearly, serves them perfectly. Sometimes she serves them much better than their own mothers, biological mothers. But at the same time, that detachment is there, that I am an employee of this house, I am a maid servant, I will do my duty to the best. So also we can continue that, extend or interpolate, practice that attitude in our working, in our day-to-day life, in our homes, also in the workplace. That you will put your whole heart and soul after the responsibility for which you are getting a salary, or perhaps you're doing something, some job which you have considered to be your swadharma, as part of your duty and responsibility. You do it with full attention, with full concentration, and as if they are all dear to you. But at the same time, you are detached. You don't have any some kind of anasakti. That's why the whole Bhagavad Gita, Mahatma Gandhi wrote a beautiful commentary saying that the whole Bhagavad Gita, the commentary he named as Anasakti Yoga. So it's a kind of karma yoga which Bhagavad Gita teaches us, and Sri Ramakrishna very clearly teaches us. That is his very important message for people who are in the world and who are helpless, who still want to make Sri Ramakrishna their ideal and make Sri Ramakrishna's life and message relevant in their day-to-day life. So he says, treat them as if they were dear to you, but this point is very important. But know in your heart of hearts that they do not belong to you. Anything that is gross, that is temporary, does not belong to us. That which is permanent, the eternal substance, is dear to us. That is the exact meaning of Sri Ramakrishna's life. When he says God realization is the only goal of life, what he actually means as this sticking or focusing all our attention, all our energies to that eternal substance which is real, which does not change, which is not temporary, and shaking off all the impermanent objects from the mind, which is nothing but vairagya. The beautiful word which our scriptures give is vairagya. So not sticking, vairagya doesn't mean you have to give up, you have to be negative. You have to give up your attachment for the smaller things which are impermanent, which make you restless, which make your mind restless, which make your mind complicated, which convert you from a simple child, a 5-year-old child like a Paramahamsa. His life is so simple, so uncomplicated. That's why Sri Ramakrishna says the Paramahamsa is like a 5-year-old child. And Jesus also says you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven unless you be like a child. So that is what he means, the uncomplicated nature. That is the wonderful life. With this uncomplicated nature comes purity, comes unselfishness, comes spirituality, comes all the other qualities. All we have to do is keep our life simple, have one goal in life, pursue that is the uniqueness of Sri Ramakrishna, and that is what we have to practice to the extent we can in our day-to-day life. So now, if there are some questions, I think.
Thank you, Shamiji. That was truly.
Have I taken more time? Then maybe 14 minutes. You can adjust. You can have less questions.
We've got about 5 minutes, Shamiji, so I'll try to ask as many questions as I can. You've just mentioned about Sadhu Shango, and I must mention that yourself and Shami Bimokshanandaji from Dublin had been instrumental and pillars of this Pathachakra in Scotland. So thank you so much for being such a guiding force in our lives through all these months, helping us take lessons every month, and also advising us with this event. So all our heartfelt respect to you for that. On that note, I'll ask you a couple of questions. So there's one from Moshumi Dotto in Guwahati, India, and she's asking, how can we use the principles of Thakur, particularly during this pandemic times, to keep ourselves calm and lead our life?
It's much easier during the pandemic times because Nirjanvas is forced, isn't it? On a lighter note, Nirjanvas is so difficult when you are socializing. But during this pandemic specifically, Thakur will come closer to all of us if we really want. If we are prepared for it, this is the best time. I mean, pandemic makes at least one thing very easy, that is Nirjanvas. Second thing, the Nitya Vastu Viveka. See, when you see people dying because of this pandemic, apparently healthy people just catching the infection and dying, it gives you a hint of the impermanent nature of this world. So in a way, if people are sensitive enough, if they just don't go, if they are not very, if they keep their eyes and ears open, a simple person also will understand the fickle nature, the temporary nature of this life, how fragile this life is. So during the pandemic, that is another lesson. Perhaps the positive takeaway from this pandemic is the impermanent nature. The powerful, the strong, everybody is flattened by a small virus. That is one if we take it from a very materialistic point of view. The second is, as I told you, Nirjanvas. So Thakur's message is so relevant, and that gives you, some of them are now working from home, those who are lucky enough. They can even have the satsanga, online satsanga, or even they can practice more meditation. They will get more time than they would usually get, because often you will see it's not just our duties and responsibilities that make us busy, but the socializing which we do, which is really unnecessary. If you are really sincere, we are really sincere about spiritual life and spiritual practices, then we have to find time. Then we will be very careful not to waste time. So now, in a way, because we are not able to waste our time, I should say, on gossiping, socializing and all, if that has been taken in a positive way and we use it in a positive way, it can take us nearer to Thakur. So as I said, all the 4 parameters which we discussed about how one can proceed in spiritual life and make our life and message fruitful and divine and fulfilling, that clearly shows that the pandemic, in fact, has, if taken positively, can really help us.
Thank you so much, Maharaji. There were so many other questions, but because of time constraints, we need to move on. Please accept our pranam and keep blessing us and keep us in your prayers. Thank you so much.
Okay, sure. Jai Thakur.
Jai Thakur, Jai Ma. Before we move into the final talk of the evening, I know Shami Sarvapriyanandaji has entered the backstage, but I've been asked to sing a song sort of depicting my love and devotion towards Thakur, and I'm absolutely blessed that Shamiji is listening from backstage. So pranam, Shamiji. I'll sing this song, and while we were discussing this song, I was discussing this with Shumona, who I consider as my spiritual sister from Edinburgh. We had a few songs in mind, And this song, when we finalized, I later realized was actually sung by Swami Vivekananda in one of Thakur's birthday celebrations. So it makes it all the more special for me to try and perform it in front of all of you. নিবিড় আধারে মাতো চমকে রূপ রাশি তাই যোগী ধ্যান ধরে হয়ে গিরে গুহাবাসী নিবিড় আধারে মাতো চমকে রূপ রাশি অভয় পদ কমলে প্রেমের বিজলি খেলে চিন্ময় মুখমণ্ডলে শোভে অট্ট অট্ট হাসি তাই যোগী ধ্যান ধারে হয়ে গিরে গুহাবাসী নিবিড় আধারে মাতো চমকে রূপ রাশি মহাকাল রূপ ধরি আধার বসন করি সমাধি মন্দিরে গোমা কে তুমি গো একা বসে সমাধি মন্দিরে গোমা কে তুমি গো একা বসে অনন্ত আধার কোলে মহানির্বাণ হিল্লোলে মা অনন্ত আধার কোলে মহানির্বাণ হিল্লোলে চির শান্তি পরিমল অবিরল যায় ভাসি তাই যোগী ধ্যান ধারে হয়ে গিরি গুহাবাসী নিবিড় আধারে মাতো চমকে রূপ রাশি তাই যদি ধ্যান ধারে হয়ে গিরি গুহাবাসী নিবিড় আধারে মাতোর নিবিড় আধারে মাতোর নিবিড় আধারে মাতোর চমকে রূপ রাশি মা জয় ঠাকুর জয় মা Right, as I said, we are now heading towards the final destination of the night, and it's my honor and good fortune to introduce to all of you, Swami Sarvapriyanandaji. Swamiji has been appointed the minister and the spiritual leader of the Vedanta Society of New York and assumed his duties there from January 6, 2017. He was an inaugural fellow for 2019-2020 at Harvard Divinity School, and prior to this was an assistant minister of the Vedanta Society of Southern California. Before being posted to the VSSC's Hollywood Temple, Swamiji served as an acharya of the Monastic Probationers Training Center at Belur Math. He has served as the Ramakrishna Math and Mission in various capacities through his life, including being the first registrar of the Vivekananda University at Belur Math. And Shamiji tonight is going to talk to us about uniqueness of Sri Ramakrishna in the light of Vedanta. So I welcome you, Shamiji. Pranam. Pranam, Shamiji. Thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute honor and blessing that you're here with us. And over to you for your talk.
Thank you, Gaurav, for having me, for organizing this program and having me on this program. So let me go right ahead with a chant, and then we'll get into the subject of this evening. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Sthapakaya Cha Dharmasya Sarvadharmaswarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. Not many people know that Swami Brahmananda, whom Sri Ramakrishna considered his spiritual son, the first president of our order, he actually wrote a book. There is a book, The Spiritual Teachings of Swami Brahmananda, but that is a compilation from his teachings done much later. But during his own lifetime, he actually wrote this book, which was a collection of the choicest teachings of Sri Ramakrishna. And that book is in Bengali, Sri Ramakrishna Upadesh. This book, little book, you can put it in your pocket. And I always did that. There's a little story behind that. Swami Ashokanandaji, who was in our Vedanta Society of Northern California in San Francisco, he said that this little book is a spiritual classic for our age. One day, the world will carry it around in its pockets. So after reading that, I started carrying this book around in my pockets whenever I traveled. It was before the pandemic. And that accounts for the sorry state of the book, I think, because of overuse. Now, it has also been translated into English. This is called The Words of the Master. Now, why I'm referring to this book is, it starts with Sri Ramakrishna's Vedanta teachings. We're going to talk about Sri Ramakrishna's uniqueness in the light of Vedanta. It starts with Sri Ramakrishna's teachings on Advaita Vedanta, the path of knowledge. So I'm just going to take up the first few teachings compiled by Swami Brahmananda about Sri Ramakrishna's teachings. From that, the choicest teachings which Swami Brahmananda himself has taken from that and put in this book. The first thing he says, I'll read out the original Bengali and I'll translate. Sri Ramakrishna says, Manush apnake chinte parle Bhagavan ke chinte pare. If a human being knows who he or she is, if we know who am I, you know God. Knowing yourself, you know God. This is a Mahavakya. In Vedanta, those sentences in the Upanishads which talk about the identity of the individual and the cosmic, the Jiva and Brahma Aikyam, those sentences, some of them are taken as Mahavakyas, or the great sayings, which sum up the essence of Vedanta. But this is exactly what he's saying. If you know yourself, you know God. What does that mean? What does knowing oneself mean? This is the starting point of the inquiry in Advaita Vedanta. See, in spiritual life, there are broadly two paths. One may move outwards into this vast universe and conceive of a great power behind this universe, which you call God, and search for God. That is one grand and the most commonly traveled spiritual path, the search for God. The other way, we can turn inwards and look at ourselves. Who am I? What am I? The problem in turning inwards is looking at ourselves, we think we know who we are. I'm Swami Sarvapriyananda. What is there to know? No, Vedanta says there is a great secret hidden behind your apparent self-knowledge. You do not really know yourself. So, how do you inquire? What is it that we are supposed to know about ourselves, by knowing which we shall know God? That inquiry Sri Ramakrishna teaches us here. আমি কে ভালোরূপ বিচার করলে দেখতে পাওয়া যায় আমি বলে কোনো জিনিস নেই. Who am I? If you inquire, how do you inquire? You take a look at your own experience. We take a look at our own experience. What am I? And Sri Ramakrishna says you will not find anything which answers this question. Who am I or what am I? You need an answer to that. This is what I am. You will never find this is what I am. There will be no object of experience which will answer satisfactorily the question who or what I am upon inquiry. If you do not inquire, just casually, if I say, who am I? The immediate answer is this body and the person inside this body, that's who I am. I don't even bother with this question anymore. But Sri Ramakrishna says next, হাত পা রক্ত মাংস ইত্যাদি এর কোনটা আমি? Hands and feet, and if you look inwards, blood and flesh and bones, which one is this? Which one am I? Am I any of these? And then he says further, যেমন পেঁয়াজের খোসা ছাড়াতে ছাড়াতে কেবল খোসাই বেরোয়, সার কিছু থাকে না, সেই রূপ বিচার করলে আমি বলে কিছুই পাইনি. He says that just when you peel an onion, and it's just you peel the skin and the next layer and the next layer and next layer, you don't get to any specific thing or object called the onion. Similarly, when you inquire inwards, you do not find anything. That's amazing. We always think, I exist. There's no doubt that I exist. And yet when I inquire, I will find nothing corresponding to this I exist. What is it that exists? We'll see exactly what Sri Ramakrishna means. I will translate the rest of it, and then we will see, we will actually try this inquiry which Sri Ramakrishna suggests. He says, if you inquire like this, you will find nothing corresponding to the I. What am I or who am I? Sheshe ja thake tai atma chaitanya. What remains, that itself is the self, and is nothing other than consciousness. See, if you had stopped there, you inquire inwards like peeling an onion layer after layer, and you find nothing corresponding to the I, and if you had stopped there, that would be the Buddhist insight, the insight of the Buddha, that there is no objective entity corresponding to our feeling of I, to the feeling of the ego I. It does not refer to anything objective at all. Stop there. That is the Buddhist insight, anatma. But one step further inwards, not object. Sheshe ja thake, what remains over after inquiry is consciousness, and that is the self. Amar amitto dur hole bhagavan dekha den. When you disidentify from the ego, that I-ness is lost in the ego, you realize what God is. So what is the meaning of all of this? This inquiry that we undertake. I remember a doctor, I think from Scotland or England, maybe in your circles, who emailed me and said that he had an epiphany. He's looking at the scans of the human body, and he said, I've been doing this for years, and suddenly it's only just a couple of days ago that I was looking at the scan of a body and thinking, which one of this am I? A scan of my own body, which one of it is me? Which organ, which system of organs, which cluster of cells or organ systems, which is me? These are all objects. These are things. In none of them do I find I, me, myself. So you start with the body, and what we, without inquiry, naturally we say, I am this. What is this? I. What am I? This body, not just this hand, but this whole body. I am this. But then we inquire, and then we notice a few things. And the Upanishads, the Vedantic texts help us in this inquiry. As Sri Ramakrishna says, take a look, hands and feet and blood and flesh, which one of it is I? We notice that this body, it is subject to change. from babyhood to childhood to teenage and youth and middle age and old age. So many changes come upon this body. Which body am I? If I'm the body has changed so much. And I feel I am the same one. I am who I am. I am the same person. I, the changeless and the ever-changing body. How can I be the same as the body? The insight is the changeless and the changing. How can they be the same thing? So the ever-changing body, and intuitively I feel I am not, I was the same one in that baby body, in the child's body, in the youth's body, in middle age, the old person's body. I'm the same one. Therefore, I cannot be the body itself. The second insight we get, the second way we can understand that we are not the body, is what that doctor wrote, that the body is an object. It's an insentient object. It's something that I am aware of. So because it is an object and I am the subject. See, this book is an object and I am the subject. I am the knower and the book is the known. I am the seer and the book is seen. Drashta and drishya. They must be different. They cannot be the same thing. The subject and the object, the experiencer and the experienced, the seer and the seen, these are always two different entities. In the same way, I experience the body. I can see the body here. I can touch and taste and smell and even hear the rumblings inside the body. The body is an object to my senses. I am the experiencer and the body is the experienced. Seer and seen, drashta and drishya, they cannot be the same thing. And since the body is drishya, thoroughly, it is an object of experience for all my senses, then I cannot be the body. Because it's a drishya, I am a drashta. Again, one more insight. Subtle one here. I am aware, and the body is something I'm aware of. See, the second pointer was drashta and drishya. This third one, which I'm pointing out now, is chit and jada. I am aware, I am conscious, and the body is insentient, something that I am aware of. First, I was a seer and the seen. That's one way of looking at it. Another one is conscious, not conscious. When you talk about conscious and not conscious, in which place would you put the self, yourself? We will always identify ourselves with consciousness, because I am always aware. I am not something that others are aware of. I am that which is aware of everything else. Therefore, I am on the side of consciousness. I am aware. The body is something that I am aware of. It is not aware of me. When I look at my hand, I have the feeling I am aware of the hand. I have no feeling. There is no part of my experience that the hand is aware of me, Sarva Priyananda. No. The hand is an insentient object. As much as this table, as much as a chair or a piece of wood, the body is also an object, an insentient object. I am sentient. I am aware. I am conscious. Therefore, chit and jada. 3 pointers. Savikara and nirvikara, changing and unchanging. I am unchanging, body is changing. Therefore, I cannot be the body. Savikara and nirvikara cannot be the same thing. Drashta and drishya, experiencer and experienced. I am the experiencer, the body is experienced. I cannot be the body. Chit jada, I am aware, and the body is something I am aware of. Therefore, I cannot be the body. These 3 are enough to be going on with. Because of this, I feel I am not the body, and yet I'm there. Then where am I? I feel I'm somewhere more subtle, more inwards, and I'm experiencing the body from inside. So the self is something subtler than the body, something interior to the body, sukshma, antara in Sanskrit, subtler and interior. Let's look. What is subtler than the body? What is interior? Interior, I don't mean physical interior. If you do physically interior, if you go exactly as Sri Ramakrishna said, rakto mangsho, flesh and blood, that's also body. But interior means, in a more subtle sense, say, the first thing we encounter is prana, breath. Now, not just the physical breath, all the life processes, prana, which keeps this physical body functioning, which powers the senses, sense organs, all the activities of the body. So that prana, am I prana? Am I life itself? And when we take a look at that part of prana which is most obvious to us, breathing in, breathing out, we notice immediately that also changes. You're breathing in and out. The prana changes in this body like the tide surging in the sea. Sometimes hungry, sometimes satiated, sometimes tired and sick, sometimes healthy and energetic. This is prana, activities of prana. They are changing. And yet I am the unchanging experiencer of the changing prana. Again, the prana is something that I can experience. I am the experiencer. You know, when mindfulness meditation, you meditate upon breathing in and breathing out. Vedanta will point out, notice something. If you are aware of the breath, then you are the one who is the witness of the breath, and the breath is something that you witness. The breath is an object, and you are the experiencer of that. You are the drashta, the breath is the drishya. You are the drashta, prana is the drishya. Drashta and drishya cannot be the same thing, so I cannot be the prana. Again, that third point which I made, sentient and insentient, aware and not aware, just check. Am I aware of the prana, or is the prana aware? Is the breath aware of me, Sarva Priyananda, or am I, Sarva Priyananda, aware of the breath? I am aware of the breath. Breath cannot be, is not aware of me and cannot be aware of me. It's an insentient thing. So, because I am unchanging and the prana is ever changing, I am the observer and the prana is the observed. I am sentient, aware, and the prana is not aware. Savikara, nirvikara, drashta and drishya, chit and jada. Because of that, I am not the prana. I am not the body. Go inwards, the prana, I am not the prana. Then go inwards, antara, inwards, subtler, sukshmatara. You find the mind. I'm including the sensory activity also. So the mind, thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, perceptions also. All of that going on in the mind, and the sense of ego also comes. So all of this is going on in the mind. And am I the mind? And this is where most of us identify with, yes, I am a mind. I am this person. I understand that I'm not the body. I'm not claiming to be the body or the prana. That's silly, but I am an intelligent, thinking adult person. I feel I am a person in this body, embodied person, by which I mean I am a mind, a personality in this body. But apply the same pointers. Is it changing? Is the mind changing? So, oh my God, is the mind changing? It changes continuously. Throughout the day, it keeps changing. So many thoughts from morning till night coming and going, happy and sad and curious and bored and all sorts of thoughts, ideas, desires, memories popping in and out. So continuous change. And yet I am the one who experienced the happy mind and the sad mind. I am the one who experienced the bored mind and the energetic mind, and so on. The sleepy mind and the fresh and awake mind. Which mind am I? I am the same and the mind is changing. The changing and unchanging cannot be the same. Same thing also, mind, I'm experiencing the mind. If we look inside introspection, I'm aware of the activities of the mind. When there is a feeling of misery, I'm aware of the misery. When there is a feeling of curiosity, I'm aware of the feeling of curiosity. When a memory comes, I'm aware of the memory. If the memory, I'm failed to recall the memory, I'm aware of my failure to recall the memory. So I'm aware of the activities of the mind. When I am the drashta of the mind is a drishya. Drashta and drishya cannot be the same thing. We come to this rather stunning conclusion. The mind is there, but I am not the mind. Because it's a drishya, I am the drashta. It is as much of an object as this book. It's an object, I am the subject. The mind is also an object, and I am aware of the mind. It gives you a sense of freedom from the mind, sense of lightness, that it's there, but it's not me. And then it is even more amazing. It's worth thinking about. Is the mind sentient or not? Usually we think the mind is conscious. If anything is conscious, in our normal discourse, when you think anything is conscious, then mind is conscious. You may say, Swami, body is not conscious. Fine. Prana is not conscious. All right, I may accept that. But the mind is conscious. Our thoughts, feelings are conscious. But Vedanta says, consider that any particular thought, take up a thought that, Swami is talking. This is a thought. Swami is talking. Now, are you aware of the thought Swami is talking, or is the thought aware of you? If I think a thought, am I aware of the thought, or is the thought aware of me? Does the thought say, hello, Swami Sarvapriyananda, thank you for thinking me? Never. It's an object. Even the thought is an object. And I am the one which is aware of that object. I am sentient, Chaitanya, Chit, and the thought, even mind, is Jada. It seems to be conscious because it shines in me. I am consciousness. This consciousness is reflected in the mind. Vedanta calls it reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa. Because of that, the continuous presence of that reflected consciousness, we think very naturally that the mind is conscious. But the mind is full of reflected consciousness, not conscious. Just like the moon at night, it seems to be a luminous body, but the light does not belong to the moon. It's sunlight reflected from the moon. The moon is not naturally luminous. So I'm not the mind. And Vedanta divides the mind into two subtle parts. Mana, Buddhi, Chitta, Ahankara. Put Mana, Chitta and Ahankara in one, or Mana and Chitta in one, and Ahankara and Buddhi in the other group. So intellect. The intellect is that part of the mind which we are using right now, hopefully, to try to understand all this. I am trying to understand this teaching. This faculty of the mind, this is called Buddhi, that which gets the knowledge. The moment when you're working on the knowledge, Sankalpa Vikalpa, if you're trying to work out a mathematics problem, and then you suddenly get it. Yes, this is the answer. When you're trying to work it out, that's the mind, Sankalpa Vikalpa. And when you work it out, you get the answer, clear knowledge, Nishchayatmika Buddhi, the clear clarity, the cognition which comes in clarity and understanding, knowledge flashes, that's intellect. That intellect also is changing. What you do not understand yesterday, now you understand. What you understood yesterday, now you understand differently. Our theories, understanding, everything changes. The ego, all of this is part of this Buddhi and Ahankara complex. And this is also changing. And I am the unchanging experiencer of this. I am the Drashta, Buddhi is also Drishya. I am Chaitanya, Buddhi is Jada, Savikara, Nirvikara, Drashta and Drishya, Chit and Jada. Because of this, I am not the Buddhi also. As I go deeper, beyond the Buddhi, you will hit a blankness. If you carefully follow, body, I am not. Breath, I am not. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, I am not. Why I am not those? Because of those three reasons I pointed out. Then the Buddhi, the intellect, that also I am not. Then blank. But that blankness, which is what we experience in deep sleep, for example, that also comes and goes. We also wake up out of a deep sleep. That blankness is also experienced in a certain sense. It's not the mind which is experiencing. You can't see it or you think about it, but it's still experienced. That's why we are able to talk about it after we come out of that blankness. So that blankness, that's also an object. And I am the drashta, the experiencer of that object. And then beyond that is the third pointer, that the blankness is not conscious. I am conscious of it. I am aware. It is not aware. Savikara, Nirvikara, Drashta, Drishya, Chit, Jada. Therefore, I am not that blankness also. Then what am I? See, what is this process which Ramakrishna has initiated? You will, those who study Vedanta will know that I'm going through the Taittiriya Upanishad, Pancha Kosha Viveka, not the body, Annamaya Kosha. I am not it. Not the prana, Pranamaya Kosha. I am not that. Not the mind, Manomaya Kosha. I am not that. Not the Buddhi, intellect, Vijnanamaya Kosha. I am not that. Beyond that, the blankness, the Anandamaya Kosha. I am not that. Then what am I? Those of you know the story of the 10th man. I think in the 7th chapter of Panchadashi, Vidyaranya Swami uses the 10th man story to the hilt. He develops the story step by step to show all of spiritual life from an Advaitic perspective, using the 10th man story. I will not repeat the 10th man story. Many of you have heard of it earlier. Just by the way, I put all these interesting Vedantic stories in one talk, Vedanta through stories or parables. I think the talk you will find on the Vedanta Society of New York on YouTube channel. So one of the stories is the 10th man story. People who had crossed the river and they thought one of them was drowned. When they counted, they thought there were 10 people will be there, but they counted only 9, forgetting to count themselves. Then the wise man came and said, "You are the 10th." In the same way, when we experience the 5 sheets, body, I am not it. Prana, I am not it. Manas, mind, I am not it. Buddhi, I am not it. The Anamaya Kosha, I am not that. Then who am I? The problem is, this is where Sri Ramakrishna says, Pinajar Kosha, the skin of the onion, layer after layer you remove, then you don't find anything called an onion. So there is no objective thing which corresponds to the real I. The false I, yes, body, mind complex, the Panchakosha. But then upon inquiry, Sri Ramakrishna says, Vichar korle dekha jai. Upon inquiry, I find there is nothing corresponding to the sense of I. Then the 10th man story helps us. The one which is experiencing all of these, the one which counted those 9, the one which is experiencing body, prana, mind, the intellect, and the causal body, the Anandamaya Kosha. Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. All these 5, subtler and subtler and subtler, inward and inward and inward, appearing to whom? Appearing to what? You cannot answer it. You cannot answer it objectively. As Sri Ramakrishna says, Ja thake tai. You will know it intuitively as your own real self. Tai Atma. That's the real self. Chaitanya. That is consciousness. Now, by this process, we actually come to a better understanding of consciousness than you have in any kind of consciousness studies today in the world. Even today in the world, when you talk about consciousness studies, they keep mixing it up with the mind, with the intellect. But we know very clearly, anything objective, not conscious. That to which it is an object, that is consciousness. We come to an appreciation of what is meant by consciousness. In Advaita Vedanta, in a class yesterday, I was saying, if you understand what is meant by consciousness, even intellectually, if you understand what is meant by consciousness, you are at the most one step away from enlightenment. So this understanding of what is consciousness, not an object, the pure subject, you, that is the real you, Tai Atma. Once you do that, then what he says is, Amar amitto dur hole Bhagavan dekha den. In English, it's a rough translation. When the ego dies is not a very good translation. It can lead to confusion. We'll see why. Sri Ramakrishna says that Amar Amitto, when you realize that I am not the ego, I am not invested in the ego, I am not the ego, I am the witness of the ego. The ego is something that appears to me. I am the consciousness which illumines the ego and its activities, but I am not the ego. That is, you can call it the death of the ego, because it will continue to appear. Sri Ramakrishna says next, so that witness consciousness, I am Chaitanya, Atma. The ego will continue to appear. Even after that, I feeling, why not? People think that, oh, you're enlightened, there's no ego anymore. Right and wrong. After enlightenment, is the body there or not? From our perspective, I'm not talking about from the perspective of the enlightened person. From the perspective of the enlightened person, it is all Brahman. But from our perspective, is the body there or not? Yes. We can see the body. Can you not see Ramakrishna's body, Vivekananda's body? You can see the body, the enlightened person's body. If the body is functioning, is the mind functioning or not? Can they talk to us? The sense organs are functioning because they can talk to us. They can walk and eat, so the motor organs are functioning. The mind is functioning because they can recognize us and talk and converse with us. They can teach us Vedanta. So the mind and the intellect and memory are all functioning. Why will the ego not function? Is enlightenment equal to failure of the ego? Like heart failure, all the organs are functioning, but only ego will stop functioning. No, ego will continue to function, except that it remains like a shadow, like a function, what it actually is, a function of the mind, of the antakarana, not the real I. So Sri Ramakrishna says next, Dui rokom ami ache. Dui rokom ami ache. Ekta paka ami ar ekta kacha. The I has these two stages or aspects. One is for the unenlightened, one is for the enlightened. The unenlightened I and the enlightened I, or in Sri Ramakrishna's language, the unripe I and the ripe I. What's the difference? Amar bari, amar ghar, amar chele, egulo kacha ami. The one which functions like this: my house, my child, my room. This I and mine, this kind of functioning, this is the unripe I. And what is the ripe I? The enlightened I. Ar paka ami hocche, the enlightened I is Amitar Dash, I am the servant of the Lord. Amitar Shantan, I am the child of the Lord. Ar Ami Shei Nitto Mukto Gyan Sharup, I am that eternal, ever-free consciousness, Gyan Sharup. So this last one, I am that eternal, ever-free consciousness, is exactly what we discovered by the process of inquiry. If you go by the process of devotion, bhakti, then even then the ego will remain. But then the attitude of the enlightened ego will be, I am the Lord whom I have discovered, whose grace is upon me. I am the servant of the Lord. Or more to Sri Ramakrishna's own attitude, I am the child of the Divine Mother. There also is an I. I is there. Aham is there. But that's a ripe I. That's the enlightened I. I am the servant of the Lord. I am the child of the Lord. That is in the path of bhakti. But the path we just took just now, which Ramakrishna mentioned in the first point, I am that eternal, ever-free consciousness. That's also a functioning of the I. The eternal, ever-free consciousness, there is no ego there. The ego now points to the eternal, ever-free consciousness. That is the ripe ego, paka ami, not the unripe ego. Now, this is not yet Advaita. This is not yet Advaita. What is that? Why not? Because earlier I was identified with this body and mind, and there's this whole world in front of me, a variety of difference, multitude, plurality is there. Now I'm identified with consciousness, this light of consciousness, the pure subject, not non-objective, pure subject consciousness, which I am. But then I'm aware of the mind and the body and all these other people and all other beings, living and non-living entities. The plurality is still there. Where is Advaita? Not two, Advaita. Where is the Advaita? So to establish not two, I have to see that all of this entire variety appearing to me, the consciousness, is an appearance, is not an actual external entity apart from that consciousness. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says next. There's a very unique connection to these teachings. And look how Sri Ramakrishna, we always say he's a great teacher of bhakti, which he is. But he's a great teacher of Advaita also. Look at this. The third teaching, I've already read out the first and second. Third teaching, I'll read it out and then we'll stop. এক ব্যক্তি তাকে বলেছিলেন, আমার এক কথায় জ্ঞান হয়, এই মতো উপদেশ দিন. A certain individual once said to him means said to Sri Ramakrishna, give me instruction, give me one instruction by which I will be enlightened. Ek kothay, in a few words, or in not one word literally, one sentence, one instruction by which I will be enlightened. So some very wise person had said, because if you had said, just tell me how I will be enlightened, then whole Ramakrishna gospel of Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita is there, more than 1,000 pages. But this intelligent person said, tell me one thing by which I will be enlightened. And Sri Ramakrishna says, Tini bollen, he said, Brahma Shatya Jagat Mithya, eiti dharana karo. Brahman alone is real, the world is an appearance, world is false. Brahman is real, world is false, the world is an appearance. Eiti dharana karo, assimilate this, contemplate this, assimilate this, realize this. Dharana can have different meanings. Contemplate, assimilate, realize this. Iha bolia chup koriya rohilen. Having said this, Sri Ramakrishna fell silent. Swami Brahmananda mentions this. Having said this, Sri Ramakrishna fell silent. See, there is a mistake in the English translation. In the English translation, which is in general a good translation, but at this point, they make a mistake. Certain person asked Sri Ramakrishna, kindly instruct me in one word so that I may be illumined. To which he replied, the absolute is the only reality, the universe is unreal. Realize this and then sit silent. Realize this and then sit silent. This is not what was said. If you know Bengali, in Bengal, Swami Brahmananda writes that he said, Sri Ramakrishna said this and he became silent. Iha bolia chup koria rohilen. Sri Ramakrishna fell silent. He did not tell that person to keep silent after realizing it. So this is a mistake in the translation. The meaning is, why did he write this? Sri Ramakrishna remained silent means this is the final teaching. There's nothing more to say after this. Now, how does this relate with what we were doing? Remember, I am that pure subject, the consciousness, awareness. Now, all that I'm aware of, Sri Ramakrishna says it's an appearance in me, the awareness. It is not different from me, the awareness. It is an Jagat Mithya. The universe is an appearance. It is not a second reality from me, the awareness. I am existence, awareness, Sat and Chit, and this entire universe is an appearance in this Sat and Chit. It's not a second reality apart from this Sat and Chit. So it's, for example, if you say gold and ornaments. When you realize all these ornaments are made of gold, then all these ornaments, they will not be all, they'll all be gold only. If you count 100 wooden chairs in the chapel downstairs, and then if you say from the perspective of wood, how many chairs are how many entities are there? How many realities? It's all one. Chair, if you count, 100. But if you say wood, other than wood, no chair is there. The chairs are nothing but wood. The ornaments are nothing but gold. If you look out into the ocean and try to count the waves, don't, it's a useless task. But if you do try to count the waves, 10,000 waves if you see. But if you count water, one mass of water. Similar, and all the waves are appearing and disappearing in that mass of water. Like the waves in the ocean, like the ornaments in the gold. Notice the language I'm using. Not gold in ornament, not the ocean or the water in the waves. Rather, waves in the water of the ocean. Ornaments in gold. The chairs in the wood. It's a strange way of using language. Similarly, the entire universe appears in this ocean of existence consciousness, which is Brahman. So it is not a second reality. If you see the water in the ocean and the waves, will you say there is water plus 10,000 waves? No. Once you count water, only one. No wave. Those 10,000 waves will not be countably second. It is Advaita, not two. Similarly, here this non-duality is established once you realize I am this witness consciousness within, but whatever I am witnessing, whatever I am illumining, those are appearances in me. They do not constitute a second reality. How does all of this help? How does all of this help? We realize something that is immortal. I cannot die. Body dies. I cannot die. Well, the body dies. That's also a very sorrowful thing. But the body is an appearance. If a body dies in your dream, are you really sad for it when you wake up? No. If somebody dies in a movie, are you sad? You can feel sadness, but that will be an aesthetic experience. You don't deeply really feel that something terrible has happened because it's a movie. Similarly, the entire universe is an appearance in one consciousness, that you are free of death, you're free of illness, you're free of suffering as that consciousness. You're free of the ups and downs of the mind. This gives courage, this gives strength, this gives peace which cannot be shaken. This gives joy and fulfillment. Everything is I. What is there to hanker for? What is there to be greedy about? All those things are an appearance in me. Everything is in me, and yet nothing is in me. I am free of all of it. This realization comes. It's a tremendous thing. And it's effortlessly there. It will never go away. I've always been that. I am that now, and I'll continue to be that. Even time and space are appearances in me. I am not located in space. Space is located within quotes. I am not going through time from beginning, middle, and end, past, present, and future. Time is flowing through me or appearing in me. I am beyond causality, beyond Maya. This realization comes. This is freedom. This is moksha, this is mukti, this is the direct path. Notice, Sri Ramakrishna not only teaches this, Swami Brahmananda collects these teachings and puts it. I just read 1, 2, 3. In this whole collection, hundreds of teachings are there. First, second, third, fourth, fifth are all Advaitic teachings, non-dualistic Vedanta. This is the direct path. In Vedanta, they say there are only two ways, jano ya mano. You know it or you believe it. Both will work. Know it, direct path. Immediately you get the benefit. Believe it, it will work, but it will take time. That is the path of bhakti or devotion. All right, I have run out of time. If Gaurav is there, maybe we can take questions. If you've been listening carefully, there should be a lot of questions.
A lot of questions indeed, Shamiji. Have you got a bit of time to answer?
Sure, I've got plenty of time. Go ahead.
That's brilliant. What a lovely explanation of the true I. What meets the eyes is actually not the true I. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much for a wonderful explanation. I'll start off with one question from a friend of ours in London, Momita. And she's asking, and I think you've already explained a part of it. The only inevitability of life is death. So how we can prepare ourselves for this smilingly and with a positive outlook.
Okay. You don't know how relevant that is, because right after this program, there's another program. I have to go and be a part of a panel, an interfaith panel here in New York, online, on end of life. So how do you deal with end of life issues and decisions about whether to take a person of life support, when should I or should I not accept life support or resuscitation, and so on. So death, simple and direct answer, you will not die. It is the body which dies. And the death of the body, while significant, is actually of nothing to you. From your perspective, the Atman, it is such a small thing. We think it's such a tremendous thing. Our death is, what can be more serious than that? I'm sure in the program which we'll have right now, everybody will be dealing with it as such a serious thing. After all, how can you make light of death? From your real nature, from the perspective of Atman or Brahman, death is like this. You throw a piece of lint on your shawl, your body, you can throw it off just like that. It's an appearance. From an Advaitic perspective, there is no death. In fact, you need not go into Advaita also. In every religion, one thing is common in all religious perspectives, that we do not come to an end with the end of the body. If you come to an end with the end of the body, no religion is possible. No religion is possible. Even Buddhism, which does not accept Atma, even say Christianity, Judaism, Islam, which do not accept multiple lives, but they all accept one thing in common. You do exist after death. So death is not your end. Either there are two attitudes: completely surrendered to the Lord, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna is there, and he will take care of us. It's the truth. With that complete faith, we will face old age, illness, death, whatever it is there. We'll be taken care of. The Lord who has taken care of us all along till now will take care of us after this. Or jano ya mano, know it or believe it. So know it. Be very clear. Do this inquiry and realize what you are, and then you immediately see death is not the huge deal it is made out to be.
Absolutely. The part of that big ocean of water that you have just spoken about, I suppose. Thank you so much, Ami. That's a wonderful explanation. One other question that I've got is from Shonali from Kolkata, and she's asking, maybe I now know the way. I'm just reluctant to walk on it. So if I pray to Thakur to kill my reluctance, will he take care of my insincerity?
Yes. You are not alone. We are all there. We are all in the same boat. You see, it is our samskaras which tie us down. I remember this old Hindi song, Kahin koi zanjeer nahi, fir bhi badhe hue hai sab. There are no chains in sight. I can't see anybody tied with a chain, and yet we are all tied down. We are all tied down because of our samskaras. Otherwise, just look at Sri Ramakrishna. Of course, he was an avatar. He demonstrated how one can become enlightened. But look at the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, those disciples who were both householder and monks who came close to him. Within months, weeks, months, years, they all became enlightened. They all got at least a breakthrough. The religious spiritual life became real for them. That much happened to everybody within a matter of months or years. So it can happen. And take help. Take help. Sri Ramakrishna's help is there. If you have taken mantra diksha, you have every right to call on Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother and ask for their blessings. May they quicken our spiritual lives. May we attain enlightenment in this very life itself. Certainly it is. Why should it not be possible? It is my own reality. I'm not asking for one thing extra. I am that Brahman already. So what is there? By the grace of the Divine Mother, the ignorance which covers it, ignorance which obscures it, that can be removed. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That is such a beautiful explanation. I've got one question from Shantanu Shorkar Maharaji, who's in Aberdeen, and I sort of, it reflects in my heart as well, being a doctor myself. So he's asking, what is the difference between Karma Yoga and Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva? So could you throw some light on that, Shamiji?
Yes, Karma Yoga, as taught in the Bhagavad Gita, and Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva. Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva, you can say, is a much more expanded vision of that Karma Yoga. The Karma Yoga taught in the Bhagavad Gita is this, that quite apart from our religious performances, in those days yajna, that is the Vedic rituals, or today it will be puja. Quite apart from your puja, quite apart from your japa, quite apart from your chanting, bhajans, you do so many things throughout the day, in your occupation, at home, personally. All those things, Sri Krishna's great insight was this, all those things that we do, secular things, so-called, they can be spiritualized. You can perform them all as a worship of the Lord and without any desire for personal gain from it. We have to be careful there. Desire for personal gain means, suppose you are a doctor. So if you treat patients, so will you not take the salary or the money that comes from it? You will. See, Arjuna, when he is fighting the battle, and Sri Krishna encourages him to fight the battle as karma yoga. After that, he wins the battle. So will he reject the kingdom which comes after winning? No, that will come. But his purpose is no longer worldly. Earlier, I was doing all of this for money, for name and fame, for providing for my family, and all of that. Now, I am doing all of this as a search for God. It is my karma yoga for the purification of my mind, for the grace. We say in puja, every sankalpa, when you do before puja, priti artham, for the Lord's grace, for the Lord's pleasure. So the grace of the Lord will be pleased with me. That's why I'm doing this. All these activities at home and in the job, this is where Bhagavan has placed me. So now I'm converting all of this into puja and I'm doing it. So that is the karma yoga taught, and it's a very, very powerful insight. It's the great insight of Bhagavad Gita, that you can convert your daily activities into spiritual practice. Otherwise, our capacity and time for spiritual practice is so little, it seems quite inadequate for the task at hand. So that's one thing. But Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva takes the same thing and converts all of this, our life itself, into an expression of Jnana Yoga. You realize everything is an appearance of Brahman. This Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya, which we just read. See, when you say the world is false, people are false, people get scared or a little shaken, or they object to it. Why should the world be false? The world is false, and the world is nothing but Brahman, is exactly one and the same thing. The world is false is equal to the world is nothing but Brahman. The snake is false is equal to the snake it's not a snake, it's really a rope. So with that knowledge, Shiva Jnane, notice, Jnane means in the knowledge, with the knowledge that it is all Shiva, with the knowledge, not with the belief, not Shiva Vishwase, not Shiva Bhave, imagining it. One may believe it, one may imagine it in the beginning, until we realize, suppose you say, you are saying this, the book say it, but I don't really know that it is all Shiva. It still appears to be human beings and animals and objects to me. Fine. Then you have to do the aropa, superimpose upon yourself that I have been told and I have read about it and I sort of feel that it is true. So it must be God in some sense. I don't know yet, but let me just go with that hypothesis. Let me believe in that. That is also Shiva Jnane. ultimately that realization will come. Jiva Seva. So all my activities now are no longer duties as in the old Karma Yoga. This is my service to the world. My life is a blessing to others. Not only in spirituality, I will become a blessing to myself. My life will become a blessing to others. We all want that fulfillment. Let my life be of some use to others. In this way, my service to all beings is also the highest worship, because I see God, Shiva in Jiva. I see God in all manifested beings. So this is the fulfillment of that knowledge which we talked about just now. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. It is true, you will be free, you will be a Jivan Mukta. But one step further, your life will be a blessing for humanity at large. Sri Ramakrishna talks about three kinds of enlightened people. There were three friends were going and they see a big long wall and they were wondering what's on the other side of the wall. And with great difficulty, one climbs over and sees something amazing there, starts dancing, jumps over without telling the others. What did he see? Second one climbs and he starts dancing and jumps over without telling the last one. What did he see? And then this last one climbs over the wall and he sees there's a great festival going on the other side of the wall. He also wants to jump and join the festivities, but he feels, if I don't go back to the village and tell the poor suffering people about this great joyous thing going on here, who will tell them? So he turns around and he goes back. This is the third kind of Jivan Mukta, whose life is a service to humanity. And this is what Sri Ramakrishna preferred and Swami Vivekananda preferred. All are enlightened, but those two, their enlightenment freed them, but we get the benefit of it. I am here today because Swami Vivekananda came here, and Swami Vivekananda came here because Sri Ramakrishna scolded him that you are thinking of your own mukti, but I thought you would be like a great banyan tree under whose shade thousands of people, through the ages will find shelter and comfort and peace. So we are those people who are coming under the great banyan tree of Vivekananda and finding shelter. You are in Scotland, I'm here in New York, and there are people all over the world. This is that great banyan tree, and this is the third kind of Jivan Mukta. This is the vision of Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva. It's a much wider vision.
Thank you so much, Shamiji. You've already answered a conflict that I had in mind about the difference between faith and the bhakti and the knowledge that comes with it. The concept that you've just explained, Shiva Gyan as opposed to Shiva Vishwa. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm getting greedy and I'm just being flooded with questions. So are you okay to take one last question? Would that be?
Yes. Before that, let me just mention that the subject you set for me was a much wider subject than what I actually covered. Sri Ramakrishna's uniqueness in the light of Vedanta. So the real answer to that, if you set it in a question, what was Sri Ramakrishna's uniqueness in light of Vedanta? That would have been Vijnana Vedanta, Sri Ramakrishna's sort of Vedanta plus expanded version of, or the new presentation of Vedanta. What I presented here was Sri Ramakrishna's teachings collected by Swami Brahmananda. That's very much classical Vedanta. Not one thing which I talked about today was one bit outside the Taittiriya Upanishad and Shankaracharya's commentary on the Taittiriya Upanishad and the sub-commentaries after that. So that's what I was talking about till now. But yes, this question, Shiva Jnana Jiva Seva, this idea of Vijnana Vedanta, it is a new presentation of the same idea. That would be a different talk, and that would be a much more complex and sophisticated approach to Vedanta in the 21st century. This is what Sri Ramakrishna actually initiated himself, and it was expanded through Vivekananda and the other direct disciples, Nivedita, and so on. And that we are still working it out, this new teaching of Advaita Vedanta. That's the real uniqueness of Sri Ramakrishna in the light of Vedanta. Yes, go ahead with the last question.
I think you'll have to come back, Shamiji, and explain us to that another time. So thank you so much. So yes, one last question is Shumona from Edinburgh is asking this question. If Atman is our innate nature, why is it so difficult to realize?
It's not. It's not. If I step outside the paradigm of Advaita Vedanta, go to Kashmiri Shaivism, so you are actually Shiva. And you are pretending to be Jiva. You are playing, you're doing your Leela as Jiva. And nothing prevents you. Even this ignorance, we say ajnana or ignorance prevents me from realizing that I am the Atman. Kashmiri Shaivism says even that cannot be the real answer. What kind of ignorance can prevent Shiva from knowing that that you are Shiva, that you know you are Shiva? What can prevent you from doing that? He says no. It is your wish. You wish to play as Shumana right now. So no, but I want to become enlightened. All right. Now you wish to play at being a spiritual seeker. The moment you, Shiva, wish to be an enlightened person and like a Jivan Mukta, you will immediately become a Jivan Mukta. That's the vision of Kashmiri Shaivism. That at no moment are you restricted from anything. It is your complete freedom. Shiva has complete swatantriya, absolute freedom to remain as Shiva, to become a Jiva, an animal, a plant, a human being, and suffer terribly and enjoy a lot, go to heaven, go to hell, live life after life. It is all the play and joy, your play and your joy. And also become enlightened and realize Shivoham, I am Shiva, and be free. That also will happen. Don't worry. This path is a very blessed path that we have come into it. Day to day, you realize the truth of this path and you get the blessings of this path, and the peace and the joy and the restlessness for realizing. That's such a great thing. It's much better than being restless for the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Pearls of wisdom, Shamiji. I cannot thank you enough for joining us and blessing us and gracing this occasion. And we really want to have you back again. Once the pandemic is over, we hope to bring you over to Scotland for a face-to-face symposium sometime. So on behalf of everyone here in Scotland, please accept my pranam and bless us with your grace. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I pray to Sri Thakur, Ma and Swamiji to bless all of us. May we all realize this great truth in this very life itself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shamiji. Right, we are almost at the end of the symposium, and I've noticed one question that was posted by Mr. Barindra Shannel, and he was asking how can he and others who've joined us tonight be intimated of events that we host. So the easiest way would be to just subscribe to the YouTube channel or the Facebook page that we have created, and all the events will be posted there for future times as well. So that probably would be the easiest way of doing this. So to summarize, I've got only one thing to say. Noted authoress Ashapurna Devi once said, "My myopic vision cannot fathom the unfathomable Sri Ramakrishna. He seems to me like an ever enigmatic, boundless sky. The quintessence of all knowledge is treasured in his gospel, which he has catered to all in his own rural language. And tonight, we hope that we've all meant to unravel a drop of that mystery, that enigma that we call as Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna." Once again, I thank all the revered speakers for their precious time, for gracing us with their presence. Thank you for joining us. It's been a wonderful event. I've seen so many comments of appreciation. Thank you from all here in the Scotland Ramakrishna Sharada Society. Stay safe, stay happy, and stay connected to your soul. Joy Thakur, Joy Ma.